Hey everybody! On this episode of Gaming and Collecting, me and Alex are returning to our ongoing anime swap series, this time covering some relatively newer animes, including the Apothecary Diaries and Frieren. So, anyways, guys, on with the episode. So, how you been?
Uh, I can finally breathe again without coughing every 5 seconds.
Yeah, you
It's
don't have
been
the
a
plague
while.
anymore.
Well, I still am coughing a little bit. Um, but I'm over it for the most part. Yeah, I got really sick and it like took a lot out of me. Well, I got news. I quit my job. It was getting to the point where, like you want to kill yourself. No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
No,
I'm
you
kidding.
don't go there. You just do like me and want to drive off the road.
Yeah, it really was though getting to that point where I really had to prioritize my mental health over a company that just has unrealistic standards. No idea what's happening. Wants to do everything but doesn't want to do anything at the same time. And it was time for me to just walk away. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I am unemployed starting tomorrow. Well, starting Friday technically. Not too worried. A couple interviews lined up, but it's a little bit scary. But I had to do it. I literally hated my life, quit everything that I enjoyed doing, and was getting really depressed. So I needed to change. Dingle is behind me. She looks.
She sure is.
Hello. She looks concerned.
Uh, it's been a rough couple of weeks because
Yeah,
we've been sick. The
yeah. I
fucking
quit my job.
weather, it fucking
Oh, my
snowed.
windshield cracked too, which sucks.
Yeah.
I was ready.
They also use so much fucking salt up here. It is so fucking disgusting.
Oh my god. Uh, the company that I no longer I won't work at starting Friday. They every time they salt, they pay $2,000. Every time they come to salt like barely any parking lot. Spent two
I
thousand dollars.
I love
That's
that because
nuts.
my old job, they were so fucking cheap. They literally just bought a bucket and they just found the lowest guy in the totem pole and said, "Go salt the parking
Oh
lot."
my god. No, they pay for
Which
like a truck to come and do it.
that's dumb. Just get a guy with a bucket. That's all you need.
Well, the best part is so they also have salt buckets to do like the steps and stuff because they have a truck that comes in and drops it. And I had lunch with two of my coworkers on Tuesday, and we're coming in the building, and then we just look down at the salt bucket, and someone just put their fucking banana peel in there.
Yeah. It's like anytime like you see one of those things that's not a trash can, but it looks like a trash can, and of course someone will inevitably throw trash in it.
Yeah,
I
you
still
know.
think the best was not at Callaway, but my previous job. Um it snowed so bad that there was so much snow on the roof that they actually were they had people up on the roof shoveling the snow off the roof, and they were like they asked me if I would go help, and I looked at them like I ain't going on the fucking roof. I'm like
Yeah,
I'm just
honestly,
like
don't blame you for that.
I'm like that ain't in my fucking job description, and I'm like if you guys have a problem with it, I'll fucking call OSHA. They immediately did not say a word after that. I was like, yeah. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
don't give me shit about this.
you didn't
Uh,
turn your sign on,
we're not going to do the video for this one,
your
so why
glowy
bother?
sign. Well, I don't know, it's fun. I have Dinkle behind me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just like I was thinking about keeping my makeup on, but then it was much more appealing to take it off when I got home. So I took it off. I've been watching Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, I'm getting your play by play, and it is hilarious. My
I
favorite moments are when you ask a question like, Alex, you've seen Super, you know what happens.
I know I still got questions.
Well, my
I
favorite
got
is
to
like is Dende, and you were like, who's the tiny Namekian? And I'm like, Alex, he's in Super.
well, no, the best part is I said, why is Toru Honda? Like, why is Toru,
No, you said, why does this Namekian sound like Toru? I'm like, well, maybe because it's the same voice.
it's just weird. All the voices are weird. Like I prefer Frieza's voice currently versus the grandma voice.
Well,
Um,
yeah, well, Frieza was originally Linda Young, which I am convinced is because they took one look at his character design and saw the lipstick and just assumed female. Um, yeah, Chris Ayres, before he passed away, did a much better job, and then Damon Mills does a pretty good job as well. So,
yeah, I prefer those voices, but I finished the Frieza arc. Um, I finished up to the Frieza arc, and then I started watching the Garlic Junior arc, and then I fell asleep during it because it was really boring. And I went to go back and rewatch the episodes today, and then I said, nah. And I just, because the episode I left off on when I fell asleep was Krillin proposing, not proposing to Marin.
oh yeah,
Um,
his bimbo ex girlfriend who
yeah,
has the same name as his daughter.
yeah, that's really
That's
weird, Krillin. That's weird. But I finished that episode, and I was like, I don't need to go
Did
back.
you
I
get to
didn't
the
miss
scene where
that
she
much.
calls? Did you get to the scene where she calls Chi Chi and Bulma old ladies?
Yeah, I did. I saw that
I
was
love
one.
I love that episode so
I
much.
didn't. I watched them half awake, the Garlic Jr. arc, and I think I'm fine with that. It wasn't canon, so I don't give a shit. I'm not going back and rewatching it.
My
It was
my
boring.
favorite part is when she leaves with Krillin and she's like, "Bye, grandmas."
Yeah, she was
Uh,
very bimbo-y and dumb. And also, like, Chi Chi kind of sucks. Like, she's really mean to
the anime,
Gohan.
early Z does her very dirty.
They make her. I mean, because honestly, I'm watching it. I'm like, I don't like you. You're really mean to your son.
She
Like, she hired that tutor who's like abusive and
yeah, but
whipped
she
him.
yeah, but she at least gets her comeuppance. Like she does actually be a mom at the end of it.
Well, I hope so because like
You
right
still
now
haven't got you haven't got there yet. Okay,
she's in the dumb bitch category, and I don't like Chi Chi. I didn't really like her from the beginning of the series either. She's like seemed mean to her son.
she's a
Um,
mom. She's a mom living with this
uh,
insane family.
but she signed up for it, and she just has to deal.
No,
Like,
Alex, she did not sign up for it. She did
what do
not know
you mean?
she did not know she was marrying an alien.
She married Goku, the crazy fighter man.
Yeah, but he wasn't that bad until he found out he was an alien and then it all went to hell.
Well, there's a thing it's called divorce. She should look into it because she sucks, and I don't like her.
She gets better towards the
She,
end.
well,
Also,
I
most
hope so because right now I think she's a bitch.
she's worse than Super.
Yeah, I didn't like her in Super either. I just don't like Chi Chi. She just sucks.
Her best incarnation is from the end of the original Dragon Ball, the wedding dress arc. Um and then the end of Z, like after Goku. No, I won't spoil. Towards the end of Z, she gets a lot better. And then
Yeah.
Super regresses her back to her Z personality, and I'm like, great.
Yeah. Uh, and I finished up where the last episode I finished off. Frieza was back, and I was like, "Fuck!" I thought he was dead, but he's alive, and they've rebuilt him. Um,
Oh yeah,
but
Robo
then
Frieza.
but then Trunks appeared, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I'm assuming Trunks is gonna kick Frieza's ass because Goku's not there yet.
Most likely, yeah, I believe so. Yeah, Goku just like heals all of his fucking villains, and like he's still doing this in the super manga. I'm just gonna point that out. So
It doesn't surprise. I mean, it's part of his character. He did get dropped on his head.
that is actually canonical. Like the reason why Goku's the way he is because he got brain damage as a baby.
Yeah. No, they went over it when Raditz was back and he's like, "Did you fall on your fucking head or something?"
Yeah.
Also, Miss Dingles jumped off the bed, but now she's on the ground and she's demanding pets. She's demanding them.
So another manga ended yesterday.
Which one?
Komi.
Oh.
It's crazy how many
Yeah,
of these
it was about time. That one really
to
sucked.
be to to be fair, it did go on too long.
Yeah.
Because there were periods where the fandom was like, this is just being drawn out now. But now that it's over, they're like, no.
Well, yeah, that's always how it works. Like, oh, I'm not blurry anymore. Not like they could see. But I feel like that's always how it's working. You don't know what you have until it's gone.
Well,
as Linkin Park says.
the problem is, like, in the Komi manga, spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it, but it's pretty fucking obvious. After her and Tadano get together, it's kind of like that plot's kind of been achieved. So what's left? And then it's just mostly like her getting her 100 friends.
Yes. She
But
doesn't deserve any friends. She sucks. Komi's the worst.
You've never read it.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, everyone heard that.
That was Bill farting. That was Bill shitting himself. Not me squeezing a stress ball. See, that's the best part about not having video. They'll never know.
Except they know you and your perpetuality.
No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't know me. They don't know me. No one knows me. Hello. She's gone to the other side. She really wants pets right now. Oh my goodness. She's so needy.
Yep.
Any collecting? I haven't collected anything because I'm saving money since I will be unemployed.
Yeah. Not really collecting. I have been watching anime though. I started watching Ghost Stories and
yes.
Fuck.
I said jump.
You know what's funny? They kind of followed the plot for like the first 2 episodes, and then after that they just said fuck it and just you think it's a gag dub, but it's not. It's real.
It's legitimate dub.
I said jump.
I said jump.
Why is that character so good?
Well, when the rabbit talks, where she's like,
touch
he
me.
whispered such touch me, touch me harder. No, he wasn't like, touch me harder.
There's so many amazing quotes in that show, and I can't say any of them on the podcast.
Yes, you can. Oh, no, you can't.
No, you can't. There is a lot in that that you cannot.
My favorite is the little brother who like doesn't speak. He just like.
They also just straight up made him special, and I'm like, why? I still assume he's not.
Have you got to the episode where he's like training for something?
I got to the episode where he's doing the school like sports thing, and then his ghost buddy's there.
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna do a full episode on Ghost Stories once I finish it, but holy fuck.
My favorite episode is the bunny one with the
I said jump.
I said jump and touch me harder. Also the laugh of like, oh, like.
Also the whole, it's like, you wouldn't hurt me, you're my friend, you bitch.
Yep.
Like,
I'm gonna try and mute myself when I'm coughing for the most part, but sometimes I can't. I can't hold it. Cough break.
It's fine. I've already done so many episodes. Oh yeah, Alex, you know what so we were doing 3DO last night, and I discovered something for the episode that I thought was great.
What?
I found this.
Is that a CD case?
It's the binder from the old Hot Wheels PC.
Oh.
And it still has all the edutainment games in it.
Oh my god, wait. We gotta see them. Well, they can't see them, but I gotta see them.
It's Arthur's Teacher Trouble, Alex.
Ooh, could you play any of these or no?
No, I need to get a old PC. Got some Jumpstart spelling. The Zubinis.
Zubinis! We talked about that.
Shit ton of Hot Wheels games, racing games, math, Oregon Trail 3rd Edition.
Nice. I didn't know we had that.
I had it. I didn't know how to play it back in the day.
I had no idea.
Also, I got a free trial of Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing 10.
Oh, nice. That's good stuff.
Just some National Geographic. They threw so much shit in here that was like useless. But the main reason is because Myst was in here, because I did play Myst as a child. Because we covered Myst last night on 3DO.
Speaking of old PC games, I saw the article you sent me regarding The Sims and Sims 2.
Holy fuck. Like, if that's... Supposedly it's true.
Is it going on, like, Steam?
Supposedly it's Friday. That's the rumor. And I said... I joked with Thrak last night. I was like, if that happens, we're not going to see Alex for a month.
No, Sims 2 was my favorite of The Sims.
It's Sims... So for people who don't know, supposedly... coming out is they're re-releasing Sims 1 and 2 on PC again, the complete with all the DLC like expansions included.
They're
Like,
gonna make so much money from
dude,
all the people who love Sims 2
Sims
and
1
Sims
and
1.
2, because Sims
Yeah,
1 has a lot of nostalgia too. If
yeah.
they sold them for 20 each, that's a fair price, and they will sell so many copies.
Honestly, even if it's more expensive, they'll probably still sell a shit ton because people have been begging for that. Like, I will find a way to buy that, and that's what I will be doing. Oh my god,
I also got this Thomas the Tank Engine game.
nice.
But yeah, I found this because I was looking
Do you
for it
have
just
any
because
living books? Do you have any living books games?
the Arthur Teacher Trouble one.
Oh, okay, that one was one. Okay, wasn't sure
And
if
I
there was any
and
other one.
one Reader Rabbit game. My God,
Oh, did you hear that?
what was that?
Did you
Did you
hear
pop
that?
another stress
No, no,
ball?
no, I didn't. It just made a fart noise. I don't know how I did it, but I somehow did it.
But
Oh, did you hear that?
you're gonna break another stress ball.
Did you hear?
Alex, stop farting.
No, it's a stress ball.
Sure it is.
Wait, what are you drinking, Bill?
Same thing I drink every episode of one of those sparkling ice
Give
things.
us some facts and play the music.
Oh yeah, we have music for this segment now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's fruit punch flavored.
What
Um,
else?
it's got a QR code. Bubbles with benefits. What the
Ooh.
fuck does that mean?
What are the benefits?
Full flavored fun with so much extra. It's a thing.
What are the calories?
15. Because it's basically water.
15. What is the sugar?
You're not getting any more out of me. You're lucky you got that.
All right, we're slowly getting. What would you rate your beverage on a scale of 10 Psyducks? What would you rate it out of 10 Psyducks?
3 Wobbuffets.
All right, so you don't really like it.
No, I just felt like saying that.
Oh. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Does anything? What are you
No.
drinking, Alex?
I am drinking from my water bottle. So, I don't have any nutritional facts, but I do have a sticker that says, "You tried."
Yeah.
Which a bunch of the people from the floor gave me that sticker, and they said, "You really did try, and we appreciate it." And I said, "Aw, that's really nice." So I got a sticker. But don't worry, I know how much everyone loves my facts. So I just looked up some facts about regular old water. So, there is the same amount of water on Earth as there was when Earth was formed. The water from your faucet could contain molecules that dinosaurs drank. That's a cool fact.
You
What
get
else?
one more.
75% of the human brain is water. And 75% of a living tree is water. Our brains equal trees.
Our brains are in soup. That's why when you fucking smash your head, you get a concussion because the soup just goes.
Oh. All right, one more. The average total home water use for each person in the US is about 50 gallons a day.
Yep.
And when water expands by 9% when it freezes. Frozen water ice is
You said
lighter
one
than
more.
water, which is why ice floats in water. All right, one more.
No.
A person can live about a month without food, but only about a week without water.
Yeah. Well, you go a day without water and you feel like shit. So
Water regulates Earth's
Nope.
temperature. It also regulates
We're
the
over now.
temperature of the human
You
body.
say one more and you get muted.
Carries nutrients, oxygen to cells, cushion joints, protects organs and tissues.
You're wasting
and
your
removes
material.
Waste. What do you mean? Well, no, I'll just come up with something else. But those are my water facts, since I'm drinking just regular water from a water bottle that was from a fountain.
Lovely. But
But you tried water.
yeah. But yeah, so we have a topic for today's episode.
No,
We're
we don't.
yes, we do. We're
That was it,
returning.
guys. 20 minutes. Let's
So we're
go.
returning to the first of the year anime swap. It's back. Because we didn't do enough last season, and we want to keep this series going.
Yes.
And
Well, I watched a ton of anime, and Bill didn't watch enough.
I watched 49 shows last year.
I watched 115.
Yeah, but you tried. You were full try hard mode.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be in full tryhard mode this year, especially because Dragon Ball's taking a lot out of me.
Well, you have to get it off the list so you can finally say you've
But
done it.
honestly, all Dragon Ball is making me just want to watch Super. I won't lie, nothing has convinced me that Dragon Ball is better. Dragon Ball Z is better than Super. There's nothing. Super is better.
I mean,
Maybe the Cell arc will change, but I prefer Dragon Ball Super.
Most people agree that OG Dragon Ball is better than Z, so that's not really that controversial of a statement.
Okay. Well, it's kind of boring.
It's junk food, the anime.
It just takes so long to do anything.
Well, yeah, I know that's part of. Alex, you watch One Piece.
No, that does not take that long to do everything. That is a perfect show. There is nothing wrong with One Piece. One Piece is perfection. You take that out of your mouth.
Anyways.
And you shove it up your butt.
Anyways, so.
Sherbet or sherbet?
No one cares. So for this anime swap, excuse me, we're doing. This one was kind of impromptu, mostly because I was really sick, and I had.
Oh, you've unmuted me. I was just paying attention to Pooh until you would unmute me. She's really needy. Oh my god.
It happens, but yeah.
Ew.
So I was basically.
I almost touched the hole.
Good. So the two shows we're covering for this one are both shows that Alex picked. So this is the most impromptu I think we've ever done one of these. And that's just because when I was sick with the plague, I had a lot of time on my hands and I watched both of them in a weekend. Yeah. So for this episode, we are covering two relatively new shows. Like they're only about a year or so old.
Yeah.
We're doing Frieren, Journey to the End.
Yep.
And the Apothecary Diaries. Two.
Yeah.
You know what I found very interesting? Two 24, 28 episoders, not like the typical 12ers that we've been getting lately. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of refreshing because you actually get time to actually tell a story and they don't just give you this tiny slice and then you have to wait a year for another slice.
Yeah.
Which we're doing now with a whole bunch of different shows currently. But yeah, it was an impromptu watch session because Alex had watched both of these last year and was like, you need to watch these. You need to watch these. You need to watch these, as she said.
Well, yeah, because I had made good choices.
Well, I planned on watching both of them. I just couldn't squeeze them in at the end of the year last year because they were both 20 episoders, and that would have taken a lot of effort.
Yes.
But as we've done in the past, Anime Swap is not a comparison show. It is simply we both pick a show, or in this case, Alex picks two, and I just claim one. And where we pick two shows, and then we just discuss them, and then kind of give our thoughts on each at the end. The whole versus thing, it's not actually a competition. There's no comparison. We could literally do any two shows that have nothing.
It's One Piece, and then it would be versus because
One Piece
is always superior.
The thing about One Piece is that, we technically did One Piece in the first anime swap, but that was before we had established a formula for these.
That was technically 3 anime films, too.
Well, yeah, that's before we established
it's technically like 6 anime films, right?
4. We watched 2 Dragon Balls and we watched 2 One Pieces and 2 Inuyashas. Yep. That being said, those two shows certain shows have kind of we've kind of established any anime that's over 100 episodes. We'll probably just get
Silver and Yu Yu Hakusho. We're the only one where we're probably going to do that, unless it's we commit to it and then like do it at the end of the
Well,
year or something.
we've changed our mind on that now. Where if it's a 100 episode pluser, we'll probably just do a retrospective of it
Yeah, like we will eventually do for Dragon Ball,
for Dragon Ball, for a certain other show I'm going to be watching
One
soon.
Piece. Oh, Attack on what now? Now
Yeah,
you have to start watching it because I started my end of
I
the
said
bundle.
after Ghost Stories, and I have like 8 more episodes of Ghost Stories to go. So it's
Oh,
gonna
good.
happen.
Then we can plan that too,
It's
which I
it's
can't wait.
yeah, it's gonna happen in February. I'll start watching.
I said jump.
I'll start watching AOT finally, and maybe I'll troll Slade some more, and I'll just like watch like one episode a day for like for a couple days just to mess with them, or just subtly drop it and then bring it back.
Or you should like set it to like 50 and then just start decreasing it instead.
Well,
Just
no,
go
because
reverse.
it doesn't pop up like that on any list, so
Aw.
it wouldn't work that way.
Boo.
But yeah, so anime swaps for going forward are going to be mostly shorter series, and they're going to be whatever we come up with. And this one was very impromptu because I watched both. So
Yes.
for we decided I'm going to take Frieren because Alex really likes the Apothecary
Well,
Diaries.
I really like both of them, but
Yeah,
I
but
don't know. I just
you were hyping Apothecary Diaries way more than you were hyping
well, I
Frieren.
did it live up to the hype.
They both did,
Good.
for different reasons. Um, so I guess we'll start with Frieren. Frieren is an interesting one, because it kind of came out of nowhere, and
Yeah.
it took over the fucking internet.
Yeah, like
So
I feel like a good way of measuring it is when like it gets close to like Full Metal Alchemist and like all the FMA fans like start freaking out and start
yeah,
spamming a show. That's when you know it's really good.
yeah. When the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood fans start having a fucking cry panic attack on Mal, that's when you know a show's pretty good.
Yes.
Um, no offense to any fans of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I'm just saying the people on Mal are fucking psychotic. That's part of the reason I don't really use that site anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Frieren is interesting. The manga, by written by Hito Yamada and drawn by, I'm gonna screw this up, to Kaza Ab. Um, Started in 2020 and currently has 13 volumes. It's ongoing, and then it got
Mhm.
an anime adaptation last year in 20, actually 2 years, well, about a year ago. Let's be real, 2025 just started. Um,
Yeah.
it started late 2023. Um, it got 28 episodes, and it already has a second season confirmed. Yeah, the show legit took over the internet, like to the point where like non-anime fans were posting memes of it.
Yes.
It was turning non-anime fans into anime fans, and it's very interesting because the show itself is very chill.
Yes.
Like it's not a super flashy, over-the-top anime. It's very down to earth. Like I really love the idea of it's a story that takes it's literally a story that takes place after the main story's already happened, basically.
Yeah.
Because the show
Well,
really starts with
Well,
essentially.
I think you gotta just kind of talk about the main character, Freerin, for a bit because her character really centers around what the story is and
It's
why it starts like it does, like the journey.
mm,
I mean, the in the title, it's Freerin's Beyond Journey's End. So technically, like in the beginning, her journey ended, but she is a elf, and elves live almost
yeah.
forever.
In this mythology, they live pretty much forever, and because of that, Frieren has a very weird sense of time.
Yeah,
Like there's many times in the show where she will make a comment like, "Okay, let's spend 3 weeks here," and they're like, "No," and she's like, "Oh, is that too long?" Because she doesn't think it's that long. Because
yeah,
her sense of time is like 3 weeks is like a day to her, basically.
yeah. Not
Um,
even. I mean,
and elves are a very interesting race in a this universe where like they don't really have like their emotions are very limited. Like they don't even really like they're kind of like an endangered species because they don't really procreate that often because they just don't really have sense of a sense of affection.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
think a lot of that stems from the same thing of like the lack of time. It almost leads them to, it's almost like a safety mechanism to not, make these connections because you might lose them, which is kind of leads into a lot of like Freeren's character because
because right at the start of the series, we see the end of. She was a part of this heroes party led by the character named Himmel, who's literally
yep,
known as Himmel the hero because he's the
yeah.
hero of this world. Um, and she's basically the main mage of their party, and they literally defeat the. Isn't it like the Demon King or something, or
I believe it's the Demon King. The Demon Lord.
the Demon Lord? No, the Demon King is from Konosuba.
Yeah.
This is the Demon
No,
Lord.
they defeat the Demon Lord, and it's Himmel the hero, Heiter the priest, and then Isen, a
Eason,
dwarf,
I believe.
the dwarf warrior.
And what's very interesting is because of where it ends, we don't really see at that point any of their adventures, but it's implied they've had a lot of adventures.
Yes.
And Frieren kind of goes off on her own to learn magic and explore the world. And she comes back to this village like 50 years later, I
Well, I
believe it
believe
is.
like yeah, they she keeps a promise with them to meet up in 50 years.
And there's a very crazy, like one of the most impactful scenes that really highlights Frieren's lack of a sense of time is when she returns to the village. She gets called out by Himmel, who runs into her, and she turns around and he's a very old man now,
Yeah.
and she is shocked because she didn't think that much time had passed.
Yeah. Well, Himmel and Heider um were both in their much were both elderly at that point. And even Isen was middle-aged at that
Mm,
point. Cuz though the dwarfs live longer than people, they still age um faster than a Freeran does.
mm. And it's kind of interesting because like they end up going on one last journey. And what I found very interesting was, despite being like 70 years old or like 80 years old, Himmel's still pretty spry for an old man. Like he's
Yeah.
very much into the thing, but eventually it cuts again to another. There's another time skip, and it's Himmel's funeral because he had
Yeah.
succumbed of old age, and his death kind of changes Freerin a bit, and she kind of starts actually wanting to make connections with people.
Well, and I think one of the things that like that was the scene that kind of hooked me onto the show was when Freerin starts crying over Himmel. Like that was probably one of the most impactful scenes because I think it finally like hit her
Hmm.
that like though my life is so long, life is so short. And I didn't fully make those connections that I wish I had. Like they were her friends, but she never fully let her guard down. Like and she never truly
Because
connected.
we'll learn as the series goes on that there'll be occasional flashbacks to events like from the past, and we'll learn a lot of things about Freerin and Himmel in particular that
Well,
sh-
yeah.
he
Well, because a
starts to
lot of
learn.
it is based around like Freeran is technically like a historical figure. Like she's technically like she was part of the heroes party that defeated the demon lord. So for many areas, like there's statues of them, there's pictures of them, like they're everywhere.
What's
So
really
whenever
funny
she
though
sees
is
them, she sees those remembers those connections and
what's
those
really funny
memories.
though is like everybody remembers Himmel, but like no one ever seems to remember Freerin was in that party. That was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, the party. They had this really powerful mage, and like Freerin's like right there. And she's like, oh yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like for most of them it's probably the same of like they don't think that she's probably alive at that point. Like they
You,
probably didn't realize she was an elf.
you know what's really funny though about it? When you
But
first watch, like, so when you go into the series, if you've only seen the memes, you think that Freerin is like this over the top goofball character,
and then
which
she's so not.
she is a goofball, but
Yes.
in different, in not in the way the memes make it think. Because like when you
Yeah.
first hear her talk, her voice is a lot deeper than you'd expect, and she's
Yeah.
very got a lot of wisdom
Flat.
to her.
Well, she's
Yeah,
very flat. Like she's not very expressive. She's very
she
straight to the
well
point when she
she
talks.
is very flat.
Oh, all right, all right, all right.
They make the joke, God damn it,
I
multiple
know,
times.
I'm kidding. But I think like right after, well, after the death, um, I think part of it, like she ended up going back and visiting Hyder. I think about like it was like a couple years later, but she ends up going to visit him, and when she when she does, that's where she meets Fern.
Best character in the damn show.
Yes, we love Fern.
Um, so I will
And
say, Freeren's English voice actor is Mallory Rodick. I don't
mhm.
think I know her from anything else, but she does a phenomenal job with the character.
I think she's done a couple other things that I've seen. I couldn't name them off the top, but I recognized her voice when she talks.
She's a newer voice actress, though, I believe.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, we get this whole segment though because basically we end up see when we first meet Fern, she's only a little girl,
yeah.
and then we end up
But she's
getting bit.
very talented.
She is, and there's a whole thing about she's trying to hit this target across the thing, but she can never reach it. And basically, we get a whole training montage. But the way it's portrayed is that not a it's portrayed through Freeren's eyes, where you
Mhm.
don't think a lot of time passes, but then you suddenly start noticing Hyder's getting older and older, and Fern's getting progressively
Older.
taller and older at the same time until you realize, oh, a lot of time's actually passed.
Yeah.
And eventually, Hyder succumbs to his older age. And does he pass away, or does he? Do they?
Um,
It
I
was kind
think
of vague about it.
I think so. Hyder does pass away.
Okay, they were. It was
Um,
very vague how they
it was like
portrayed it.
so Fern. So Freeran had basically assigned Fern a spell that she needed to master. And if she mastered, I think it was she said she would take her with her to learn more. But she had to master the basics. Because one thing that is that free range stresses is that you don't need to learn all these fancy spells. You need to learn the basics of magic, and then you can do everything. Because that's something that ends up popping up a lot and a lot.
Yeah.
And Fern struggles with that because she wants to learn the creative stuff, but Frieren, as you'll learn, is such a free spirit. Like she doesn't care about powerful spells. She more cares about like unique ones and like silly ones. Like I think one of the ones that comes up is a spell that can actually create like just a lot of flowers, like create a field
Mhm.
of flowers. And I think at one point someone says, "Is like, why would you want a silly spell like that?" But for her, that spell was important because it could make the flowers that Himmel loved.
Yep.
And like that just shows like the kind of person Freeman is. Like she's not really about being strong, even though she is incredibly strong. She's more about doing things that kind of speak to her, and she really follows her own path. And
Mhm.
I think Fern is originally very frustrated with Freeman, but
Well,
once she really starts to understand her, um, she then kind of wants to follow that same path.
it's understandable though because Freeman is kind of a complicated
No,
character.
she's a very complicated character. Well, because the biggest thing is like that no one around her could truly understand her because no one will be able to live as long as she has, and no one will probably experience death the way she has. You
Mhm.
know, where she's made these connections and then has to say goodbye to them, and she
Well,
still lives on.
that's kind of a major thing with like her character arc through the show is she's gaining these connections with Fern and then some of the later party members that join. And it's very sad when you realize eventually they're gonna die and she'll still be around.
Well, and that was also one of the things like Himo was really pushing Frieren to help tutor her, and Frieren didn't want to at first. And a lot of it was leading down to the fact that she didn't want to make more connections just to lose them, which is completely understandable.
Mhm. Yeah, but eventually she does accept Fern, and they begin their journey.
Yes.
And this is where we learn that Freerin is kind of a train wreck.
Well, she's
Um,
a free spirit. That's what I like to call her.
well,
She's a
I
free
love
spirit.
because like up until that point, she's portrayed as pretty normal, like not like completely like off the wall. Like she's portrayed as fairly like put together.
Mhm.
And then we find once she starts traveling with Fern, we realize she's a horrible sleeper. Like she can't
Yeah.
stay on her bed for more than 3 seconds.
Yep.
She's impossible to get up in the morning, which I relate to because
Mm.
relate. Um, and she's kind of frustrating. Like one of her running gags is she'll run into chests all the
Yeah.
time, and she'll like check the chest with like magic to see if they're actually a fake, like a mimic.
Yep.
And almost every time it's like 90% chance this is fake, but she's like, but that 10% chance,
That 10% might
it
be.
could be something great. And then the running gag is she's always trapped in mimics. Like you will see her hanging out of a mimic multiple times throughout the series,
Yep.
which is hilarious to the point that they actually made a figure of it, which I kind of want.
Yeah.
um,
And then one of the other things too that they keep running into is, they keep struggling with Freeren's lack of understanding of time. Because
yes.
it frustrates Fern. Because Fern, like, I want to keep going, I want to keep going. And Freeren's like, nah, like 6 months is fine. Like that's like barely any time. But for Fern, that's half a year.
Yeah. And what's cool is eventually Freerin runs into what was the name of her, the dwarf? Eisen, or was it?
Yes. That's not for
Eventually,
a while though.
well, we don't have to go deep into every detail.
Yeah. Well, she does um well, one of the things I wanted to bring up though before that, because she runs into them before, is Freerin ends up running like facing like an old enemy that she faced once before while she was traveling with the party. They sealed the enemy, and she basically
Oh
the
right, yeah,
seal
the
had broken. And part of it was like that's where Fern really learned that like you don't need all these crazy spells. Just following the basics will get you your results and probably get it faster. So that scene like where they're fighting Qual, um,
and he had spent
Fern
years making this one attack that was designed to kill
healing magic.
humans.
Yeah,
And what's funny is by that when he wakes up, he finds out that that spell has been mastered by humans and now is nothing more than a trivial little thing, to the
yeah,
point where they actually use the spell against him to
yeah.
kill him for once and for all.
But that's also like the first time, like, because your assumption is that Freerin is very strong, but this is one of the first times where like Freerin just easily kills Qual,
Yeah,
and that's
because
also
you've
where Fern gains a lot more respect for Freerin. Because at this point, like she's mostly going with Freerin, one because she wants to travel, but two also because uh Hyder is dead, so she
yeah,
kind of doesn't have a place to go. But this is where she really starts to like gain a lot more respect for Freeland and gain more understanding of her.
yeah, because like one of the main things that they always bring up throughout the thing is like it's always implied Freerin is strong, but the more you go through the series, the more you realize she's like the strongest person on the fucking planet. Like
Yeah,
she is extremely powerful.
she's incredible.
Like to the point where we'll get to it later, but there is an encounter where it showcases her strength, and it's actually kind of scary.
Yeah,
um, but yeah, they kind of the gist of the plot is they kind of just journey from place to place, and because
yeah,
Freeren's ultimate goal is she's trying to find heaven. Um,
yeah. And along the way too, like she'll do like silly tasks in order to get grimoires that like most people wouldn't find valuable, but she will. Um, because a lot of the times they'll do like things in exchange for things. Because I think the next arc, like they're cleaning the beach, and when they finally do, and she gets the grimoire, they find out it's a fake, but she was okay with that. Like she
yeah,
did it because she wanted to help, and it was a good way to train Fern as well.
mm, yeah. Eventually, though, we do get another party member. We get Stark, I think his name, right?
Yes,
Stark's great.
Stark. Poor Stark.
Well, I love him because he is now another form of frustration for Fern.
Yes.
Like legit, everything in this show frustrates Fern, and I love it because she is so adorable.
Yeah. Fern is a very cute character. Like they did really well. I mean with her design, with her in like her just actions and stuff, her pout, like she's a very cute character.
Her,
Like you immediately love Fern.
you know what her perfect like characterization is? She is like the perfect poster child of just silent rage.
Yes.
Because she's always
Just how I
raging.
feel
Like
sometimes.
anytime, like half the time Stark doesn't even do anything like really that bad, and
And
she
she
just
just
is
blames Stark.
she's just punching him repeatedly with that pout, and I'm just like, I love this character. She's
Yeah.
adorable. Um, but yeah, eventually they recruit Stark, and Stark's
Yeah.
he's like their typical sword. He's essentially their Himmel of this group, the
Yeah.
hero.
But he's also a little cowardly. Like when they first meet him, he was like a little scared, like scared to kind of do anything. But by traveling with them, it kind of pushes him to kind of go beyond. Plus ultra. Just kidding. My Hero
But
Academia.
yeah, yeah. Um, but eventually we find out he was actually a student of Eisen, and they had kind of
Yes.
a bad falling out. Um, because reasons. It's
Mhm.
I'm sure it'll get more explained later in the series, but like one of his like things is like he's always trying to make up the fact that like he kind of failed as a student.
Mhm.
And we're kind of jumping around, but they go eventually from village to village, and eventually they do get a fourth party member. Um
Yes.
in the funniest way possible because Stark gets bit by a venomous snake. Right after this priest warns them, be careful of the snakes, they're deadly. And then
Yes.
Stark immediately gets bit, and they go to the local church, and the priest there's like, he's gonna die, like his brain's
Yeah.
gonna melt, and they're all
Yeah.
like, he's
And they're like,
doomed.
ah!
And then the priest that they had met, who had warned them, literally walks in. He's like, what did I just tell you? And he like heals Stark within like 3 seconds. He's like, all right, don't do it again, and then wanders off.
Yeah.
And we find out that this guy is his entire deal is that he essentially was supposed to join his friend on this journey, but he didn't because he was afraid to leave his brother.
Yeah.
Um, and we
But
find
also
out,
understandable why
well,
he
it makes
did.
sense,
Yes.
but we later find out that like his
Just
brother, like,
reading it.
and we know you're farting over there. Um,
It's the stress ball.
we find when you break that one, I'm gonna laugh so hard. Um,
I will not break the peep.
but yeah, we find out that he gave up on this journey and he's just kind of reluctantly staying because they keep trying to get him to join their party. And one of my favorite things is there's a point where he's like, "Okay, I'll join the party if you have a sexy older lady with you." And they
And
and they
Frieren's like,
immediately,
here I
yeah, Frieren does this thing. It's like her like sexy magic, and he's like, I said old, like hot old lady, not that. Basically. And what's hilarious is then they cut the Stark and Fern, and they're both infatuated. They're like, that's dangerous, Miss Freeman.
am. Because they get it. They love Frieren.
Well, the joke is that the joke is that he's only into like older women kind of thing, and that he because Freeman is kind of eternally youthful, she doesn't come off as an older woman,
Yes.
despite being like thousands of years old.
Um,
I just love
but
how like how lame her attempt at being sexy is, where she's like, "Hello," and it's like so Freeman.
yeah, it's pretty funny. Like one of the things though that you did skip over that happens before this is when they do fight the demons.
Right, right.
Yeah, because that's a big arc too. Because like that's where she literally just annihilates someone.
Oh,
Like she, like especially with the famous line, like with the not famous, but like
well, yeah. So I had mentioned it earlier. They one of the main. There's a whole bunch of these recurring demons because in this world, demons are very interesting in this world because
mm,
they have this kind of thing where they're like sentient, like in almost human like,
yep,
but their whole thing is like they're just constantly evil, and they like
yeah,
anytime humanity tries, because there's a great scene where there's a young demon boy, and this village like decides to they're gonna kill him, and this village decides to like give him a second chance.
yeah,
And predictably the kid acts nice at the start and then immediately kills the person that brought him in.
yeah. Well, and like this is one of the scenes too where like Frieren is telling them like no, you can't, no matter what, you can't trust them. And it was because, and that was kind of a flashback for her. Um, and like the others are just like, what do you mean? Like, you have to, like,
Well,
and she's
because
like, no, you,
there's that great scene where after like the demon boy betrays them, she's like about to kill it, and she looks at Himmel and goes, "You're not going to stop me again," and he just doesn't say anything
yeah,
because he's basically like, "I get it now."
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's
And she
because
goes through that same struggle during like her current life with Fern.
because there's once again they find this like
it was these demons were basically taking over the town, but they were
Yeah,
putting on a charade that they were kind of being like diplomatic about it, but truthfully they were going to betray them the whole time. Um,
yeah.
I think at one point they like kidnap Fern or Free.
No,
They kidnap.
Frieren gets imprisoned because they know who she
Yes.
is. And there's an amazing scene where one of the demons goes rogue because he thinks he can take Frieren out on his own
Yep.
and gets fucking destroyed. Like
Yes.
Frieren kills him in like 3 seconds.
Yes.
And there's like a great scene where like she walks out of the jail cell after she kills the demon and sees the guard that the demon killed. She's like, "Well, this is just unfortunate." Because now she's like, "How am I going to explain this?"
Yeah. She's like, "Fuck, I look bad."
But eventually they do defeat the demons there because they actually like Fern ends up injuring one of them by taking them by surprise because they didn't realize how powerful she was.
Yeah.
Um, but eventually they find their leader, who is this very older demon that Freer knew personally from back in the day,
Yeah.
and the way she gets defeated is one of the most insane
Well,
moments in the show.
because or so it was at Aura the Guillotine was who it was, and
Yes.
she has a magical artifact called the Scales of Obedience, and basically like she could basically control whoever it was, and that's kind of how she was gaining power.
Yep.
And she tries
But
to do it to
well,
Freerin.
that's the thing. The scales, if her soul is more powerful than the other person's soul,
Yes.
she gains control. But the scales have one drawback, and is if the other person's soul is more powerful, they take control of you.
Yes.
And she does this to Freerin, and because Freerin kind of hides how powerful she
Well,
is,
yeah, that's like a big scene too. Is like she's actually hiding her soul, and then she just lets. She's like, "All right," she lets it out, and then the other one goes, "Holy shit! Who did I mess with?" Because Freerin basically hides. I mean, we've said it multiple times, but she hides who like her abilities.
yeah,
Like
she
she
kind of like
hides how powerful.
represses her
Yes, she
mana,
suppresses her magical ability.
which later gets discovered that's actually one of her only weaknesses is that there's like a brief period when she does a spell where her mana gets like exposed.
Yep.
But because she hides that, she ends up taking over Aurora, and the demon is so terrified because she doesn't know what to do. And one of the most savage moments in this entire
Yeah.
show is Freeman gives her this like "reason you suck" speech, and then literally walks away. And all she says is, "By the way, kill yourself," and just
Yeah.
like basically forces Aurora to kill herself. And it is a savage and dark scene, and it's like it's one of the moments too where you realize Freeman does not give a fuck when it comes to
Yeah.
demons. Like she does not care for these people at
Well,
all.
because she knows, like in this show, like there's no romance
Well,
like Inuyasha. These demons are unredeemable. Like they
it's a
just
different
like can't.
universe,
I know. I'm good for
which is hilarious because watching solo leveling, elves are evil as fucking solo leveling. So
most of the anyone who's not human is evil, but
I know
you'll see why. You'll see.
it's just a
Once you
funny
read why, you'll
dynamic.
get it.
It's a funny dynamic,
Yeah.
regardless. But going back now, like eventually they when they're recruiting their fourth party member, he ends up eventually joining them after his brother basically tells him, "No, I don't want you to waste your life here. Go out and adventure."
Yeah. Well, part of it too, though, was like I don't remember if you mentioned it, but part of the reason why he also stayed was because it was kind of in hopes that his friend would almost come back, because he had a friend growing up that wanted to basically go and travel, um, and like he was gonna go join him, but he left because of his brother. So a part of him also stays behind in hopes that he comes back. But then I think eventually what pushes him is like his brother's like, "I'll be fine," but also like you need to go find your friend.
Hmm.
And I don't. It's not shown in the show if he found his friend, but maybe we'll learn later on.
It's so we'll get to why, but eventually they go off to they end up going to this village, which is just an older village that Freeman knows this dwarf that guards it, and he's been there for pretty much ever. He's so old to the point where he should have been dead, but he like kind of just lives
Hmm.
because he's too stubborn to die. And he's so old to the point where like he doesn't. It's shown that he had a wife who passed away,
Yeah.
and he is so old that he doesn't remember what she looked like, but he still
Oh.
remembers her. Um,
That and I think that was also one like this show like puts you through an emotional roller coaster.
yeah.
Was honestly just the thought of like someone growing that old. Like and I think also that scene hurt Freeman because she was like, that could be me.
Well, because they also imply because there's a point too where like Stark gives Fern this like it's like a necklace that has like a symbol on it, and that symbol is like, oh yeah, in most cultures this is like a marriage proposal.
Well, it was her birthday.
Right, yeah, because
Yeah.
oh yeah, because she was all mad that no one got her a birthday present, and she
Yeah.
was all pouty about it. So
But
he buy
Freeman was going around to find her one the whole time.
yeah, but Stark ends up getting her this bracelet because that she liked, and it finds out that it was actually it basically meant it was a marriage proposal kind of thing, but which is played mostly for laughs at Stark's expense. But there's actually a subtle thing there because we find out Frieren has a ring with that same symbol on it
Yeah.
that Himmel had given her, and it's kind of implied that he kind of proposed to her, but she was too oblivious to notice.
She just didn't get it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where once she kind of realizes it, it kind of it bothers her a little bit because she didn't know.
Well, I think too, I think in hindsight, she did kind of know the hidden meaning because he did put it like there is like a, I
Well,
believe, a
yeah,
flashback where he
he
puts it on
basically
her ring finger.
yeah he basically proposes to her,
Yeah.
which is a sweet scene, but it's also kind of tragic at the same time.
No, yeah. It's really like there's this underlying love story between Freeran and Himmel. And it's just like it's tragic because like you'll know it can never like you're just looking at these
Well,
flashbacks.
yeah,
You
because
know
the
it
whole
can
time
never
you're like
happen.
Himmel's dead, like long dead by this
No,
point.
yeah, and he's not coming back.
Like every
Well,
episode starts with a time frame and it says so and so years after Himmel the hero died, and
yeah.
it's like damn, which is interesting too because then she kind of lives vicariously through Fern and Stark, who it's very obvious that they like each other, but it's one of those like
Yes.
it's one of those things where like to the point where the priest is like, why won't these two kids just fucking kiss?
He's the narrator. He becomes the narrator from
Yeah,
Kaguya-sama.
he just gets so frustrated by it because they're being teenagers essentially. Um, but there's also a point where they discover this like statue that they have to clean for this village because they're helping this old lady out,
Hmm.
and they notice that one of the statues of these two characters, one of them being this elf that they encounter in a cabin randomly earlier in the series.
Yep.
And I love that scene though when they go into the cabin and he's just working out to stay warm, and
Yeah.
Fern trusts her. She's like, "We can't go in there. There's a pervert in there." And he's like, "No, I'm just trying to stay warm. It's cold."
It's cold out.
And the whole time Fern's like, "Right."
Yeah. Well, she's also forgetting that elves are elves,
Yeah, they
and
don't
they're
have
just
it.
like, yeah.
They're an interesting species in this universe.
Mm.
Eventually though, we kind of they're eventually because of where their paths converge, the priest guy, I forget his name, but he goes off on his own because he finds out where his friend went, and it's in the
Yes.
complete opposite direction from where the party's going.
Yes.
And because of that, basically they go their separate ways. And it's really funny because it's like, wow, we got this cool party member and he's already gone.
Yeah.
But it's subtly implied he'll be back at
Yeah.
some point.
No, I definitely think he'll be back. Um,
Don't expect him in this season though.
no, yeah. And then like the rest so the next like kind of quest is like they end up I believe they end up just running into like like it was like a city with a king and his son had passed away, but Stark kind of looked like
Oh
basically
right,
just
yeah.
like it. So Stark ends up kind of filling in as just to
Well,
kind of help give closure to like the city because his death was too the son who died, his
this
death was
is
too tragic.
this is a great scene too because it's implied that the king is from the same place where Stark is from. It's
Yes.
where Stark it comes from is like this very ambiguous thing that we don't know in the anime yet. We're probably going to learn in season 2, and because I know I've been slightly spoiled, but not enough to know exactly why. That we find out about his backstory later in the manga.
Yeah.
But it's implied that they came from the same air, but like region.
Yeah.
But it's implied that like Stark did not have a good relationship with his family.
Yeah.
Um, and the way he's being treated by the king is kind of off-putting to him because it's kind of giving him these weird flashbacks. Like there's a point where the king had another son who he comments isn't as powerful and he's not very talented like his brother was,
Mm.
which Stark immediately gets kind of these PTSD flashbacks. But
Yeah.
then the king says, "But you know what? We're still going to let him train because at some point he's going to be he'll be the heir, and
Yeah.
he's going to need and he will." He basically implies that he's like, no matter how much he might not be the same as his brother, he's still my son, and I still care.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is something that you can easily imply that Stark didn't get to experience.
well, it's kind of implied that Stark is basically the second child in that same situation,
Yeah.
but he was basically not treated the same way like this goes.
Yeah. Like that's the thing is like even like the smaller arcs, they get deep. Like and they get like they're really powerful and like they make you like feel a lot of emotions.
Well, there's a
Um
great scene too where like so Stark's going through all this training to be a
Basically a
basically
prince.
to act as the prince temporarily, and Frieren's off doing whatever at this point. Frieren's kind of off on her doing her own thing,
But
and
Fern is learning how to
well,
dance.
at first Fern is just chilling, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, you need to learn how to dance and be a lady," and she's like, "What?" And they're like, "Well, he needs to have someone to dance with, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming you don't want him to dance with anyone else here."
And she's like,
Um,
damn it.
But there's a great scene where like Fern's learning and it's a fucking disaster. Like she fucking face plants at one point.
Yeah.
Poor Fern, but it's very her. Um, but the thing ends up going very well, and then it ends up all going to plan, and then Frieren gets a book.
Well, and it's nice too because he kind of Stark gets a little bit of closure at the end of it because I think it's also implying that part of the reason why he had a falling out with it Eisen was kind of for or Eisen was kind of for similar reasons and
Yeah.
like at the end of it he's actually says, you know, I want to go back to him and tell him about my adventure, which
Mm.
is like good that he got kind of what he needed. Um
Yes.
which is good.
Yes. Um, but yeah, it's like one of those things where it's a very heartwarming thing, and it goes right into the next arc, which is essentially the final arc of the first season,
Yes.
where they have to get to this. There's essentially like a mountain thing, um,
Well, they're
and
trying to get to heaven, and the
yeah,
only way to get to where they think heaven is, because I don't know if it's necessarily going to be heaven. Like I feel like I'm not completely sold on if that is actually what's going to happen. But in order to get there, you need to have a mage that's at a certain level to get through there. And Frieren has not ever taken a test. She
but
has something
she's got a thingy that like everyone's like, what the fuck is that?
well, except for the people who do know about it and they go, "What?" Like,
Well, yeah. There's the people who know what it is, but like every time she brings it up, well, I live so long that they change this thing every couple of weeks, so I'm always like, why bother? She's like, I got this thing, and everyone's like, what the hell is that? And she's like, I
yeah.
don't know, but it's a thing.
Um, so they end up having to take they need to be a first class mage. That's what they're
Yeah.
calling it. Uh, so they end up going and they have to take a test. Well, they have to take multiple tests and they get put into teams. And Fern and Freerin don't get put on the same team.
Mhm.
Freerin gets put with two younger mages who
Who
she
hate
ends
each
up kind
other.
of like who hate each other. No, they hate but love each other. And she ends up kind of coaching them the whole
Yeah,
time.
ends up being their mom, basically. And
It
she's
was
like,
it was real cute. And then Fern kind of ends up with a couple. I she ends up with I believe the green haired girl.
yeah, the psychotic green haired girl and the guy who just teleports, or no, he makes clones.
Yes, she ends up with those. And their first task is to get a
Get a bird.
um
And
they
get a
call
bird and survive.
a style or a stiller style. And these birds are like hard to catch because they're very sensitive to like sound and
Yeah.
stuff. So they can basically hear you coming. And when they do fly away, it creates like a sonic boom too.
Yeah. And basically we kind of jump through the things where like people keep failing, but eventually they do get them, but then other people are trying to steal them from others. And
Well, yeah, so that's kind of like what's happening is some of the teams like they went and actually tried to catch them, but some of the other teams are like, I'm just gonna wait for them to catch them and then I'm gonna steal them. But the also part of the task is that your whole team
has to live
you have to live.
because
So there's
people
even that.
fucking die in
No,
this.
yeah. Like there's like I think that was like one of the first. I mean, we saw like the demon die and we saw people die of natural causes. But this was the first time you saw just people like fucking killing each other in this show and it was like, "What? Well, what's
Yeah.
happening?"
And what's funny is they're the whole time they're in this like force field, which kind of protects them from the elements. And the whole time they're going like because the guy proctoring the exam, he's very full of himself, and he's just kind of sitting there going like, "Yeah, no one can break my barrier. Like they're all weak. No one can do it." And someone goes, "Do you know who that random elf is?" And eventually they realize it's Freer, and he's like, "No, they can't. No one can break my barrier." And then Freer just fucking breaks the barrier just because
Yeah.
he can. And he's like, "They broke my barrier. What do we do?" And the person who's like the head mage, who's another elf that we've learned is like stronger, like the I believe she's the strongest person on the planet,
Yes.
arguably, because we don't really know Freeren's true power. It's
Yeah.
very ambiguous. But she's like she has this love hate relationship with Freeren because Freeren annoys her.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because Frieren, well, also, we haven't really brought her up, but there was another mage that Frieren was taught under, and I believe Frieren had Flam, Flamel.
something like that. Yes.
Um, I'm trying to see if it has the pronunciation thing, but basically, she was a great mage, but she was a human,
Hmm.
and Frieren learned from her. But Frieren also got a lot of her quirks from her, like her
Yes.
joy, like where I'm trying to remember her name. What the elf Sere or Sire? Where Sire wants to be strong, Flamel or I don't know how to say her name. I can't remember her name.
Orange girl.
She just
Yeah.
Orange Girl, she just loves the joy of magic.
Yeah.
It's not really about getting strong. It's more about just enjoying the gift that you have. And that's where Freeling gets a lot of her like traits is that's why she goes after grimoires that were, maybe they have like really silly things just in order to get something that, it might be a little silly, but it'll make her happy. Um and that's where the elf who doesn't like Frieren gets frustrated because she knows how strong Frieren is, but Frieren just kind of like does her own thing.
I think a lot of it is I think she knows Freeren might be more powerful than her, but Freeren's the way
Yeah.
Freeren is, she'll never
Well,
actually use it the same way that she does.
I think she knows the truth is that Frieren probably is the strongest elf in the world, but she's choosing not to be.
Yeah, because Freeren's is very different. That's the best
Yeah,
way to
she's a
explain
very
her.
complex character.
But
Um,
going back to the challenge, the exam, they end up finishing this task. Freer Fern, and basically all the characters that mattered pass
yes.
because there's a bunch that really didn't matter who die, or just fail. And then we go to the next exam, but it's funny
Mhm.
because in between each exam there are these little moments where we see what Stark's up to because he's not here. He's off getting
Stark's
drunk
just
or
doing his own thing.
wasting
Um,
his money, and Fern is very unimpressed.
yes.
But they go to the next exam, and that is it's like this it's essentially a dungeon that they have to go through, and
Yes.
there are like shadow doppelgangers of all
The
the
labyrinth.
characters. Yes, and the proctor of this exam is one of the most sadistic characters in the series because she acts all innocent and weird, but then you find out she's actually one of the most deadly like
Mm.
mages.
But
Um,
that's also, I think, why you kind of really like her. Because, like,
well, she immediately goes with Freerin and Fern.
well, because
Um,
she's like, this is going to be fun.
yeah,
And
which is
it
great because
was.
because Frieren then finds a mimic and gets stuck in said mimic, and she's like, "I think I
And
went with the wrong group."
but no, she didn't. But yeah, it really is. And so part of the thing too is that like in the first test they did not care if anyone died, but in this one they care if people die.
Well, on
So
this
they give
one,
them like a golem that
on
can,
this one, they care basically. You get one chance.
yeah,
If you don't use your one chance and you die, oh well.
yeah,
But
that was your decision.
but what's funny is like they all kind of go off in their own different random directions. A lot of them aren't really being team players. Some of them are,
Mhm.
and they start encountering these like shadow doppelgangers of each character, and eventually the main group runs into Freeren's doppelganger, and they're just like, "Fuck,"
Yeah,
because it's basically like they're like, "Well, we can't get past this."
because I think like it was Denkin who was like the short guy with the monocle.
The
I think
guy
like
who
at
you
one
hate
point,
at first and then really like by the end,
yeah, like I think he goes, it's like they sure gave us a final boss, like at the end, like where he's like, this just isn't even fair.
which is funny because the Freeren doppelganger isn't even the one that's scary. It's the one of the proctor,
Yes,
because you find out what she's hiding.
yeah, how strong she is.
I felt really bad that
But that, and then it's also that's why she went into it. Like that's why she also joined them in the labyrinth because she knew that they were gonna have to fight her.
oh yeah. What's funny too is like at first you think there's just one of each, but then you find out no, they respawn. Like they
Yeah.
come back. Um yeah, it's crazy. Like I think at one point, like the silver-haired girl that was part of Freeren's team in the first thing, she ends up getting having to leave because she gets like stabbed, and you feel really bad because you ended up liking her by this point.
Yeah.
Also the other guy who was part of that the mage with the monocles group,
Yep.
he gets taken out there. Also, I love the fact that he just basically adopts the girl that was in his party.
Yes, he's just like, come here,
Come
you're
here,
my pet.
granddaughter, because he
Yes.
probably. I also like how it's implied that he probably should have been an S rank, but he just never really bothered.
Yeah, he just was like, he's like, I'm fine, I got money, I'm good.
Yeah.
And does it also imply that the whole, no,
Well, no,
it was
the reason he's
no,
wants
Land
to.
was the one who wasn't even taking the test. Like he wasn't even there the whole time.
Well, yeah, he's the one that's. We'll get to that, but we
Yeah.
find out that the guy with the monocle, what's his name again?
Denkin.
Yenkin. We find out that his reasoning for why he's doing this is actually really nice. It's because he has a friend on the other side that he wants to visit, like family on the other side, and that's the
Yeah.
only reason he really is doing it.
Yeah,
Um,
so
but
it's kind of like similar to, I mean, Freerin.
hmm. But eventually they end up completing the task, and one of the big things that happens after that is they realize um the head elf is very mad because she's like, too many people survived. Like,
No,
what the
well, too
hell?
many people passed.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
it's not even that they survived, it's more of just that they
I don't
passed.
know. She implied it. The way she sounded like she was like, too many people lived.
No, yeah. Um,
She's so sadistic.
but I also get it too, because in her chart, in her mindset, S rank, like the first class mages are the best of the best.
Hmm.
And you need to actually be the best of the best. And one of the things that bothered her too is she believed that free reign carried a bunch of those people through,
Which she
which
did.
which she did. So that's why she was upset. And
Also,
then
one thing we didn't bring up was one of in the final attack that won them that challenge, Fern's staff gets destroyed.
yes,
And it's a very emotional scene because it shows that Frieren, as much as she's developed, still doesn't really understand emotions yet.
yeah,
Because Frieren's basically just tells Fern, just get a new one. Who
yeah.
cares?
But
And
it's not that
it, it
simple.
Fern, it matters to her because that she was given that staff by
Hider.
Hyder, and it means a lot to her. And she's basically pissed off at Frieren, and Stark's like, she takes it out on Stark because of course she does.
Yes.
Um, but we find out then, like, well, Fern's basically pouting and having a tantrum,
Mm.
justifiably, because Frieren did kind of hurt her feelings.
Yeah.
Frieren ends up going to the guy from that group that got knocked out because he's actually a staff maker and repairer,
Yep.
conveniently. And she brings him Fern's staff and basically says, "Can you do it?" And he's all like, "I'm not wasting my time." And then she's like, "All right, fine, I'll find someone else then." And he's like, "I didn't say I wouldn't. I just said it's a waste of my time." Um, and he ends up fixing it. And the whole time he's like, this is actually a very impressive staff.
Yeah.
Um, but it's nice because like after she gets it fixed, Fern goes back to her room and sees it on her bed, and Freeman's already asleep at this point,
Yeah.
falling off her bed because of course she is. Um, and you can tell it meant a lot to her.
Yeah. No, there's sometimes too where I think Frieren almost it takes her longer to process things.
Well,
And like
because we
in her mind, like she kind of follows her usual thought process, but she has to put herself in everyone else's shoes.
Well, because there's a great moment of development for her early on that we didn't talk about, where like they're helping someone move a cart, and in the process of it, she ends up losing the ring that Himmel gave her,
Yeah.
and she ends up helping these people out, and they give her a spell that will allow her to find one item, and
Mhm.
they bring up the fact that like she doesn't have to go find that ring; it really doesn't mean anything, but it matters to her, and she wants to find it, so she ends up
Yeah.
getting it back. Um,
Yeah.
but going into the final real thing that happens in the anime is they go to the final test, which was originally going to be proctored by this other guy, but instead the head elf takes over because she's like, "No, I'm doing this my way."
Well, because basically, she knows that some people pass when they shouldn't have.
Yeah, and it's
And
great because basically the test is they go into a room where she's chilling and she just assesses them. And there's a great gag where like all the no namers who like really didn't matter, she's like, "You fail, you fail,
yeah.
you
Well,
fail."
and some of it too is just she judges them based on like just how they approach. Like one of them, like I believe Kane, which was one of the girls, yeah, the redheaded girl that Frieren was in a party with, she ends up failing her because she's too weak-willed. She won't make it. And
Yeah.
part of why she's doing it is to protect them.
Well,
Because
yeah.
in her way, like it seems malicious, but two at the same time, she knows that first class mages get sent out for first class missions.
Hmm.
And I'm sorry, but those two, they would die. They would not
Yeah.
make it
Oh yeah. Well,
because
I mean
they
that's why
wouldn't have passed the first round without
well
Frieren.
that's why that the other girl didn't make it because she got
Yeah,
stabbed. Um,
yeah.
but eventually she gets to a
I
free
think
rin.
only 3 people pass
No,
too.
like five do.
Well, it's only the ones that have stronger wills because we know the green haired girl who's a little crazy.
She
She
passes.
it was I believe it was Ubel. That's the green haired girl.
Denkin
Denkin
passes
passes.
because he just flat out tells her like what she wants to hear, and she's like, "Okay, you pass."
I think
Um,
Werble passes, which is the one
the
who had the fluffy coat.
Yes, I believe. Yeah, the guy who was kind of a dick, but then you find out he actually is not a bad guy. There's also that one really tall, awkward lady who like goes in and is just kind of like, you're pretty" or something like that, and she goes, "You pass," just because I feel
Yeah.
like it.
Is it like Methode? Like she has
Yeah, like
long blonde hair? Yeah.
yeah, the taller one who's just kind of awkward.
But
Um,
really, like not a lot of them pass.
nah, like the funniest one is the blonde guy with the clones because she's like, "Hey, you can enter in," and because he has a clone and he's in the doorway, she's like, "What, you don't trust me?" And he's like, "I'm just keeping my distance." And he then walks in and she's like, "No, really, where are you?" And it shows that he's chilling miles away in his house drinking coffee. He wasn't even there
Yep.
for the entire exam.
No, yeah.
And you think that she's gonna be pissed about it, but instead she goes, I like your moxie. You pass."
You pass. He honestly deserved it because that's pretty badass to
Well,
just
yeah,
take the exam from home.
while drinking coffee and not giving a
Yeah.
fuck. Um, and then finally she gets to Freerin, and Freerin she just kind of gives Freerin the runaround and then goes, "You fail because
Like
I
she
hate
doesn't
you."
even give Frieren a chance.
No, she just
Um,
basically is like, "I don't like you. You fail."
well, and
Um,
one of the things too is like she questions how Frieren was able to defeat the Demon King, and like Frieren responds, "Well, I did it with my allies. I did
yeah.
it with my friends,"
Well,
and
because
that's
this person doesn't understand that humans are getting stronger and evolving,
yes.
and Freeren's final thing after she fails, because Freeren, the main thing is Freeren didn't want to pass this thing. She didn't really give a shit the
Well, that's
entire
why
time.
Fern was doing it. She wanted
Yeah.
Fern to
Well,
pass.
because before she gets before she even gets there, like she actually like finds out she can't even apply without a license at all.
Yeah.
Um, and well, there's a great scene where she's like, "You're on your own, Fern," as she walks away.
He's like,
Um,
woo!
but yeah, but she kind of implies she's like, you know what, the next person, and like she's like, You're gonna see humanity is the future," which implies she's talking about Fern.
Yeah.
And then Fern comes in, and immediately she wants to fail her, but then Fern kind of like he sees what Fern is, and Fern is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Not Frieren levels of powerful, but she has this like spark to her that it's like it's implied she's going to be something.
And she actually asked Fern to be her student.
And Fern says no because
Yeah.
Frieren's her teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that actually is partially what gets her the pass because she's like, I get it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hate
because
Frieren, but I get it.
she couldn't turn away such a promising mage.
Yeah.
And I think too, like one of the things that for each person who passes, they get to actually take a spell. Like Siri has a ton of extra spells and stuff, and they each get to bring one. Ooh, no, Siri just popped up on my iPad when I said that. They each get to take a spell, and I believe the spell that Fern ends up walking away with.
It's to do laundry.
Yeah, it's like such the simplest thing. And like I think when that happened, that also told um Siri that yeah, she is Fern's
she's
she's
Frieren's
Fern's
student, all right.
student. Yeah. And that
And
like no matter what she did, she would never it would never work
and
because
it
she
yeah.
follows the free run path.
And it kind of ends there. It very much it ends in a way where it's like there's gonna be more. Get ready for season 2.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, and it also ends with a flashback to Himmel.
yeah,
And it was like Himmel was talking about how he doesn't do goodbyes because he
yeah,
believes that they will always cross path again. And it would
yeah,
be embarrassing when they finally met. Um, and like Freeran takes that to heart because, you know, she wants to go. Like their whole goal is to find Himmel, like see
yeah,
Himmel again. Um, so it is a very nice ending.
yeah. But yeah, so now onto the
Well,
apothecary.
thoughts. You're gonna
Oh no,
talk about your thought.
we do that at the end.
Well, I feel like it's gonna take a while.
Well, yeah, we do it at the end.
Okay. Yeah. So the Apothecary Diaries. So I picked both of these. So I was initially intrigued by the show just because I saw clips of it and it looked pretty interesting. And like I saw a lot of people said if you like My Happy Marriage, you might like the show too. It kind of has similar vibe, not completely. There's no magic in this one, but this one I kind of like because it's more science based.
Hmm.
It's more science like because the main character is an apothecary. Um, so the premise it's set in Imperial China. So you'll notice a lot of the characters have more Chinese names versus Japanese names. And it follows the main character, Mao Mao. She's a young girl who's working as an apothecary in the red light district. Um,
She
and she
also
works
sort of
for
works at a works at a brothel.
well, yeah,
Sort of.
that's part of the red light district. And she has ties to that specific brothel. Um, and she works with her father. Uh, you find out it's an adoptive father. But eventually, basically, the main premise is she happened to run into the wrong people, gets kidnapped, and is now being.
Right,
She was sold to the Imperial Palace, and she now works there.
right after
Uh,
her adopted father said, "Be careful not to get kidnapped,"
yes, and
and
that's
her
kind
response is just, "Ah, shit."
of yeah. What you'll learn that Mao Mao is a very interesting. She is not your usual main character. She's very herself. Like she's very true to herself. She doesn't try and be a beautiful, pretty lady. She's Mao Mao, and she's gonna follow her own path.
Mao Mao has
Um,
big no fucks given energy.
yes. So when she first gets sold to the Imperial Palace, she ends up just kind of doing laundry, kind of doing a lot of different chores. Uh, but eventually, what happens is she soon encounters two of the Emperor's concubines fighting. And what are they fighting about? Well, one of them was pregnant. Well, both of them were pregnant. One of their children had passed, was very sick. Well, actually, I think both of them were very sick, and I believe that one of them, who at the time, she had, I can't remember her name. Was it she had blue-haired concubine, and then there's red-haired or peach-haired? Is that right?
Orange.
Orange hair. Actually, let me look it up. There is Gyokyogu. See, that's the problem is I'm gonna butcher all of these names. Uh, and Lihu. So blue hair and pink hair. We're gonna say pink hair. Uh, we're fighting because both of their babies were sick, but she was kind of blaming the other one on it. But as Mao Mao is listening to the alleged symptoms, she's kind of, as an apothecary, she's kind of figuring out what's happening. So she actually ends up leaving a note, because what it is that the face powder that they're using at the time was a lead-based face powder, which was making the baby sick, and not only making the baby sick, but also making the mother sick. So she leaves the notes. Um, Leha, Lehla ignores the message.
Well, no, if you look closely, that's one of her ladies in waiting sees it and just kind of shoves it away.
Yeah.
Because her ladies in waiting are incompetent.
Yes. But Gyokyo, she reads the message and she heeds the warning. And guess what? Leha's son dies and Gyoko's daughter lives. And the biggest tension between them is that one is a son and one is a daughter. And in Imperial China at the time, guess what? You have the first son, you are the main concubine because you have the crown prince. But
yep. Which unfortunately, though, the implication is that Li Hao was always the second favorite compared to.
Yes.
Well, it gets even deeper when you get into the later ones, but these are the main two, and the orange one is the favorite.
Yoke. So Jinshi is a eunuch, very attractive eunuch, as they specify. Jinshi. Sorry, I don't know. I can't think. And eventually, he knows that someone said something because he sees the note and he says, "I'm gonna figure out who it was."
Also, Mao Mao wasn't subtle about it.
Yeah, Mao Mao's not very subtle, but she tries. Because what Mao Mao did actually was she cut part of her dress off and used the fabric to write the note because she didn't have any paper. All she had was her servant's clothes. So eventually, Jinshi brings all the servants in and then puts up holds up a paper or something that has the words on it. And it basically says, if you can read this, stay in this room. And no one could read it but Mao Mao. Mao Mao was the only one that could read because, again, feudal China, not everyone can read at this point. Reading is something that is given to the privileged. So Jinshi ends up introducing Mao Mao to Gyokyo, and she ends up becoming a lady in waiting.
And a poison tester.
Yes. So she ends up becoming a poison tester. And then that kind of leads to kind of the rest of the series.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's Mao Mao just trying to help them out. It's a mystery.
It's weird. There's a whole there's this whole kind of slice of life plot, and then it's mystery there's a different ongoing mystery every couple of episodes.
Yes, because the first mystery is that soldiers in an outside village were trying to pacify a village, and they all got poisoned while they were eating. So Jinchi ends up asking Mao Mao to help him out, and then Mao Mao finds out the reasons why. So she ends up getting kind of her name out there as this really good apothecary. And it's basically just Jinshi is asking her tasks and stuff, and she's kind of doing them at the same time. At one point, I believe she has to make a aphrodisiac for the king. And she does.
The emperor really likes Mao Mao. Not in that way, just the fact that she's competent.
Well, she's very helpful. And then the next arc.
Well, then his favorite really likes her too. So
yes, the next arc ends up being it's short stories. Some of them are longer than others, but it's
there's a really great joke where like once Mao Mao starts working as a lady in waiting, they're like, "Oh yeah, half your funds, your wages will go to they go to the slave like the traffickers that kidnapped you," and they're like, "Oh, how are we gonna get you out of this?" And this one, the head lady in waiting, grabs this vase and just drops it on the floor and goes, "Oh no, you broke a very expensive vase. That's gonna come out of your pay, which is gonna then get charged back to the traffickers." And then she's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you get your separate payment here for your other
Yes,
tasks."
for the poison testing.
Yeah,
Well, it's like what do they call it? It's like severance pay,
yeah,
like or like incident pay, just in case because you're taking that risk. Um, I one of the next stories is like there ends up being these rumors of a ghost, which ends up being like this woman ends up going out and dancing at night. And basically, what's happening is like Momo tries to figure out what's going on, but she soon really quickly realizes that it's not a medical thing. The girl was actually doing it on purpose
hmm
because the girl basically was in line to potentially become a concubine of the emperor, but
yeah.
she was in love with someone else. So she ended up making herself appear crazy and appear like something was wrong with her so that she would be sold off to someone else. But they find out that that someone else ended up being the general that she had loved her whole time. So Mao like tries to kind of solve the case, but she tells Gigi, she's like, listen, there's nothing wrong with her. She's just in love. Which is also kind of nice. And then the next big thing that happens is that Lady Liha gets very sick
She's like
because
deathly sick at
no,
this
yeah,
point. Like
she's like
she's
on the verge
withering
of death.
away.
And the emperor says, you gotta make sure she doesn't die. And Mao was like, oh God. Because at first, like, Mamo's doing everything right. She's trying to give her a special diet. She's trying to help her.
But
And she told them, you cannot use the makeup on her. And the ladies in waiting, why Bill calls them incompetent, will not let her help at
well,
all.
we find out later why they're so incompetent, but the reason that right now they're just really bad. They don't listen to anything Mau says. They continue to just do stuff that's actively killing
Yeah.
Lady Lehou.
Well,
And
because
every
like when
time,
you're sick, like think about it. When you're sick, what do you eat? You eat soup. You eat light meals. You can't eat anything heavy because like you can't keep it down half the time. And
yeah,
that's what's happening. Like they're
they're like
trying to give
giving
her
her
all
these
these
like
like
extravagant meals, and
that
Mau's
she
like, "Are you
can't
fucking
handle.
stupid?"
And
And
it
I love every time Mau gets kicked out because she just falls out of the room and goes
and
boing,
bounce,
boing,
bounce.
boing.
But eventually it gets to this point that like Mao snaps
Well, she
because she
goes.
like
Well, what
she
happens
touches
is
the Empress's face.
and sees the makeup, and she's like, "Wait a minute." She's
Why are
like,
you still using this?
"Well,
You're killing her.
this is the first time we see fucking angry Mau, and angry
Yes.
Mau is a different character.
Meow.
Um, where she basically like she's like, "This is illegal. Like, why are you still using this?" And she straight
And
up
not only that, like she emphasizes to the fact that you are killing her.
with the same poison that killed
And
her son.
yeah. And
Um,
like it literally shook that girl to the core.
well,
Like the girl who was doing it.
well, also like Mau bitch slaps her, and then
Yeah.
finds the makeup in the drawer, and then shoves it in the girl's mouth. Um,
Yeah.
and then after like she's done, she's like, "Go wash out your mouth," and then she
Yeah.
just takes charge from there.
Well,
And
so the lead lady in waiting, who was the one who was doing it, she gets basically uh removed from her post for the time being. Um,
it's amazing she didn't get killed because like this happens later in the series, and it usually ends with them being murdered.
yeah. Um, but she's able to treat Lady Liha and she ends up fully recovering. And it's also one of the funniest scenes where
Well, because
Mao Mao,
we learn that Lady Liha's actually really nice. Like,
yes,
she's actually just as nice as the other lady.
she's just a
Um,
little more serious.
and kind of awkward,
Yeah.
as we learn. But there's a great scene where she's all like, "Well, the Emperor's never gonna come see me again," and Mama's like, Mama's like, he sent me personally to make sure you survive. What makes you say that?" She's like, "Well, he hasn't come to see me, if you know what I mean." And Mama then goes up to her and he's like, "I learned some things in the brothel that'll help you." And she's basically like, "Bitch, you got giant tits.
Use them.
He'll come back."
Yes.
um, yeah, that happens though, and I love the fact
Well,
that like
and like the emperor does end up coming to visit her, but he ends up kind of giving her time to rest too.
Well, yeah, because she just almost died.
Yes.
But there's a funny running joke now though, where anytime Mamo runs into her ladies in waiting again, they're terrified of her.
Mm. As it should be. Um,
Well, because there's that great scene at the festival, because there's the whole festival thing that comes up where
with
they
a garden
discover,
party.
yeah, and they discover that Mamo, like, her freckles are fake.
Yes. Well,
'Cause-
that's one. Yeah, that kind of leads to the next thing is the garden party, and they're all trying to do her makeup, and then they realize to cover her freckles, and then they realize she never had freckles at all.
Because
Um,
Mamo actively tries to make herself unattractive
well,
because
and like the sad part is she's explaining why to them, and like she basically says, I'd make myself look ugly because the uglier I look, the less likely I will be assaulted, kidnapped, or killed.
well,
Which is
that's why
really sad, but it's very true.
you also realize that's why she got kidnapped, because she was actually the reason when she was out looking for things, she was actually trying to find stuff to make her freckles because her
Yeah,
freckles had wiped off by that point.
yeah. Um, and then so one of the things though before they go into the garden party is Gyoko gives each of her handmaidens like a gift. And they're basically like marks each of them as like they are part of my group. Like I'm protecting them, they are under my protection. But before she leaves, they end up running into Jinchi, and Jinchi is just so in. I mean, I think from the beginning you can tell that Jinchi really likes Mao Mao, and
Yeah,
that they will eventually become in some sort of relationship.
well,
He loves Mao Mao.
it's very implied. Like Mao is a very anti-romance character, but like
Yes,
Jinshi gets under her skin in a way that you can clearly see there's something going on there.
there's something special that will go on between them. But Jinchi ends up giving her a hairpin. And it actually makes Gyoko pretty mad because she's like, ahem, that she's no longer because it's now implying that she's no longer just hers. She's also Jinchi's. And then the garden party begins.
And what's funny is because Mao is all dolled up, none of the ladies in waiting recognize her at first, so
Yeah,
they're being rude to her again, and then Mao all of a sudden kind of like covers her face, and they see her and they go, "Oh no!" and they run away screaming because they're like, "It's her."
yeah. But then this also kind of goes through kind of they call it like the proxy wars between the consorts. And even though there really isn't that many, like for the most part, the consorts themselves are pretty fine with each other, and it's more of the lady in waitings that cause problems.
Well, because
Like
we
one
get
of them,
introduced to the other two consorts. One of them, which is a like 14-year-old, which is you. Um,
well, so and each of the consorts has their own name. I can't remember what the other ones were, but there is the virtuous consort, which and then the pure consort. The pure consort is the younger one, and the virtuous one is the older
uh,
one.
no. Li Shu's the virtuous one. Oh wait, no. I'm mixing shit up.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
Gikyo,
I mixed them up.
yeah,
The
Gikyo is the precious consort. Lihu is the wise consort. Um, uh, Lishu is the virtuous
yep,
consort, and then Audul is the pure consort.
yes,
Um, and we find out that Lishu is very young,
yes,
and Aldu is very old. She's like in her 30s. She's
yeah,
the oldest of the consorts.
yep,
And we find out that it was there's like a whole explanation that the previous emperor had a consort that the current emperor, his son, inherited. And at first,
yep,
Mau thinks it's Aldul because that would make
yes,
sense. But then we find out that the previous emperor is kind of a freak.
yes. And it was
Because
Li Shu who was
yeah,
like
which
eight.
Mau is horrified by. We also find out that the current emperor, was with Aldul before he became emperor, and it's implied that she was kind of his first love.
Yeah,
There's a lot of implications around Aldul that have not been confirmed in the anime yet, but it's kind of in your face in a lot
yes,
of ways if you really look at it.
yes,
Um, but yeah, it's funny is because those two really like each other, but their ladies in waiting hate each other.
Yeah, and one thing you find out is poor Li Shu, her lady in waitings are setting her up like to
Yeah,
look
they
bad,
hate her and they go out of their way to make her
which is
miserable.
really sad because she doesn't do anything. And like, well, part of it leads to one of the big events that happens. But two of the other things that happens is that Mao ends up getting two more hairpins.
Yeah,
She
one
gets
from a
one
random
from
soldier.
well, one from a soldier who comes back quite often, but also another one from Lady Lihu. Because Lihu and Mao like they just kind of create a bond because
Well, she
like
saved her
Mao
life,
saved her life, so she's just she loves Mao. Um,
and she
and she
gives her one
wants
of
her
those
to come.
hairpins.
She wants her to come to her crew, but she knows she probably won't get Gyoko. She won't steal her from Gyoko. But what ends up happening next is that it's a garden party, and there is meals associated with it, and one of the meals is poisoned.
Yeah, but
And
it ends up being a whole mystery too because Mao notices certain things while she's eating, and that scene where she just randomly gets that like slasher smile and goes, "This is poison."
yeah, but it turns out that the poison wasn't actually meant for Gyoku. It was actually meant for Lishu. Because one of the things that happened is the food that Lishu got was supposed to be special. So everyone was eating like some sort of fish. And Lishu had a special dish because
Because
Lishu
she has an
was
allergy.
allergic to it. And that is the dish that ended up going to Mao to
Which is
taste test that
funny
was going to Gyokyo.
because the person who poisoned it isn't revealed yet, but we find out the reason it got switched is because Li Shu's ladies in waiting were just fucking with her,
Yeah.
which is
And
hilarious because they ended up saving her life.
no, yeah. Well, and they probably ended up saving the poison tester's life.
Yeah,
Because truthfully, I mean, poison is meant to kill someone.
and
Mao is
Mama's
a
a
little
freak.
bit special. Yes.
Mama's a freak.
Yes.
Um, who likes poison? Because I remember like Jinshi ends up chasing after she leaves because the poison. Jinshi's like, he's like, "Are you okay?" And Mama's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he's like, "No, you ate poison. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And then Mama throws up because like there's just a constant running gag of Mama throwing up
Well,
poison.
no, they make her throw up. Like they
Yeah,
give her like a drug that makes her throw up.
yeah, that just is a running joke. That's funny.
Um, but Mama has to rest after that. But eventually it leads into figuring out, okay, like the next big thing is who did it? Like who's the one who poisoned it? Which leads into one of the bigger sagas. Well, I think one of the bigger stories, which is they find out,
It
we
was
find out about the history between Li Shu
Abdul.
and Abdul, but also the history between their ladies in waiting and kind of what was happening.
Yeah, because we find out because Mamo ends up going to help out at Aldu's compound, and she
Yes.
meets all her ladies in waiting who are pretty nice, which is a kind of a change compared to the previous interactions with ladies in waiting.
Yes.
But actually, Aldu's entire group is like the most competent. At first glance, we find out some things about them later. Um,
Yes.
but we learn that Aldu was pregnant early on with the
Yes.
Emperor's child, but
Well, it was the previous emperors.
well, no. Aldil was with the current emperor. The
I thought it was
previous
the previous.
no. It was
Oh yeah, no.
because
Yep, I
they
know what you're
swap
saying.
because there's it's confusing. Like this entire thing doesn't really get
It's
addressed, but
very complicated.
it's
Yes.
heavily implied.
But it's also very much of the time period. Like shit
Yes.
like this would definitely happen.
So basically, what happened was she was pregnant, but so was the previous empress.
Yes.
Who is still alive by this point, by the way, and is like they make jokes about how she looks like just as young as everyone else.
Yeah.
But what happened is because they were both giving birth at the same time, the doctor that came to deliver them, who was actually Mamo's stepdad,
Yeah.
um, he basically had to prioritize the Empress and not Aldul at the time,
Yeah.
and it was kind of a struggle for Aldul to the point where she's now infertile because of it. Um, but both babies are born, and then
Yeah.
it's we find out that
One of them dies.
one of them dies because the lady in waiting basically feeds him nothing but honey, which you find out earlier. You found out that uh Li Shu has a aversion to honey because she almost died as a kid for the same reason.
Yeah.
And that kind of tips Mao Mao off to this, and then she finds out that the lady in waiting accidentally murdered Aldu's child.
Yeah.
Um,
And is what she's doing to Lady Lishu, like with the bullying and the harassment, is out of guilt over what
yes,
happened to Lady Aldu's child.
yes.
Because she
Um,
feels well, she was responsible. She didn't know what she was doing was bad, but she did lead to the actions that killed
Also,
the
made
child.
spoiler warning here. I mean, we're spoiling everything, but
Yeah.
it's also implied. We find out that the child that the Empress had is actually Jinshi,
Yes.
and we also then find out here Jinshi's not actually
A eunuch.
eunuch. He's pretending to be one.
Yeah.
Um, taking these like he's basically taking like drugs to suppress his testosterone. It's old timey stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah, we find out that. But then there's another wrench in that whole thing where
The
basically,
babies might have been switched.
yeah, there's an implication that the babies were might have been swapped at birth, and it's kind of it hasn't been confirmed anime wise. I have not read the manga, can't say anything there,
Yeah.
but it's kind of implied because there's a scene where later where the two of them are talking and Mamao mentions Jinshi looks a lot like Audul.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's implying that uh, Jinshi might actually be Audul's
Yeah.
son, which also means he's not actually the Emperor's brother. He's actually the Emperor's son.
So he's
Confusing shit.
technically the prince. He would
Yes,
technically be next in line for the throne.
yes, technically,
Which I think also implies that they know some of this because there's an event that occurs later on where Jinchi is performing a ceremony, and it's not like something a normal eunuch would do.
no. Well, there's also it's shown earlier too where he has a special hairpin in that Mamo doesn't realize what it means, but it's like he has his like royal hairpin in, and his little helper is like, "Hey, you might want to take that out before someone notices."
Yes.
But yeah, the conclusion here though is eventually Mamo discovers that Aldul is actually stepping down because she's kind of old and can no
Yeah.
longer bear children.
Yep.
Um, so she's stepping down, and that's why her ladies in waiting were basically trying
Do anything
to keep her there.
yeah.
And Mao
But she
essentially,
didn't want at this point. She didn't
well,
want to.
we find out that it was already a foregone thing. It was her choice.
Yeah.
But in the end, her lady in waiting gets executed.
Well, what happens is that Mamo basically confronts her and says, "Look, I know the truth. You can either turn yourself in or I will turn you in." And she did chose to turn herself in,
Yeah,
which did lead to her death. But regardless, she was going to die. Like, and she knew that, so she took the more peaceful way out of
yeah.
turning herself in.
And then we get this wonderful scene where after everything's kind of cleaned up and Aldu steps down, there's a point where Mama's chilling up on the wall, and then Aldu just joins her. She's like, "You want a drink?"
Yeah.
And Mama likes alcohol a
Yeah.
lot to the point when they
Lady
propose. What?
Oh, I was just gonna say, it makes me sad. I wish we got to see more of Lady Aldul, because like
She gets ridden out really fast. I think she comes back in the manga. I think it's implied like
I hope so. Well, especially if it's implied that she is Gigi, like she'll definitely be back.
well
But like,
also it's subtly implied that she was the Emperor's true love, but because she's infertile, she can't really be his
yeah.
main wife.
But also, like one of the things too that we forgot to highlight is Lady Aldul's and Lady Lishu's relationship, well, of mother and daughter. And
Yes.
like how when they finally reunite when Aldul is leaving, and it's like so heartwarming, like the hug and the moment of like them being like they missed each other, like it was
Yeah.
very heartwarming. Sad the circumstances, but happy that they both kind of got the closure they needed.
Yep. And then the show takes a complete 180 on us, where because of all the people involved with this, basically they were all had to be fired. And we
Yeah.
find out that Mao Mao technically, because her stepdad was there, technically was involved and had to be fired, which Jinshi basically goes, Mama's like, "Am I gonna be fired?" And Jinshi's like, "Do you want to be fired?" And she's like, "Not really." And Jinshi's like, "Well, then you're fired." And everyone's like, "Jinshi, what the fuck?" Like,
Yeah.
um,
Like,
everyone's
what are you doing?
basically like all of like the ladies are like, you fucked up, like bad, like here.
Yeah. But Mao Mao finally home. She ends up kind of helping out a little bit at home. Ends up helping with one of the brothels,
Which is
which is
hilarious because
it's a little
there's a running joke where the old lady who runs the brothel is just waiting for Mao Mao to pay off her debts so that she can sell her off to somebody, and Mao Mao's like, no.
yeah. And I was like, I ain't gonna be no brothel lady. But I think they end up helping she ends up helping another brothel because there's that little girl. That one was fine. It wasn't that interesting.
Yeah. Well, what eventually happens is she's basically working as a
Well,
party,
she ends up working doing a event for the brothel that she kind of was raised in.
and Jinshi happens to show up, and Jinshi's like, wait a minute, you're hot. What's going on here?
He's like, what?
But eventually, Jinshi essentially buys Mao Mao, in a sense, to be his servant.
Yeah.
In
Well, with the goal of that, eventually she would become what's it called? Like a lady of the court, but Mamo doesn't want to do tests, so Mamo said no, thank you, and chose not to, and failed
but
basically.
what's funny though is she ends up essentially working for Jinshi, and she has to readapt to everything because now she's like up in the main complex and not the rear complex.
Yeah.
And she basically finds out, yeah, she doesn't get to have as much fun up here anymore.
Hmm.
But eventually she's brought back to the rear complex because she has to teach all the consorts about sex.
Yeah, she does like a little workshop.
This show is very sexual, by the way.
Before you do that, they introduce the new pure consort.
Yes,
because that leads into that. So
I
a new
feel
one
like
comes in.
she's a lot deeper than we've seen.
She's called the new pro conference and why oh wait, I can't remember her name. I can't find it.
She's much. Oh, is it Lowland?
Lowdown, yes.
Lowland.
Lowland.
She's much younger.
Yes, but not
And,
as young as the
well,
as
yeah,
we see,
she's of age. But
at least at the time. Um, but she ends up that the
I think
new
she's
concert
actually.
gets
I think she's Mao Mao's age. I think that's what it was.
yes.
But
The new consort gets introduced, and then
Mao
Mama
Mao has to
teaches
teach them
her.
about. Mao Mao has to teach them about sex.
But then it also leads into the next big mystery, which becomes like she ends up going through these small events that all start to interconnect. And what it ends up turning into is a plot to murder someone.
Yeah,
Which is really intense because like the first one is like there was a one of the storage rooms
it
got
gets
broken
blown up.
into. Yeah, it got blown up, and a bunch of the old materials that they use for like certain ceremonies, got destroyed. So it leads to the next thing, which happens to be that they have to remake them. And suddenly the professional artisan who does that had passed away
Yeah,
suddenly.
mysteriously, and then Mao
Mysterious.
Mao has to go to his house and solve a mystery with his kids that because he left
Yes.
behind this whole thing. And there's also this mysterious soldier who takes an odd liking to Mao Mao, and he keeps appearing.
Well, I think he's a government official. Like I don't
Yeah,
he's a he's a government official.
he's a high
Um,
ranking person in
but
in
one of the things with the artisans though is that now because the father artisan left is gone, they had to make new ones, and they gave them new drawings to make these items. Suspiciously, you are introduced to this new character. What was his name again? I have it up here. Lakin or
Lakin.
Locken.
Yeah, I think it's Lakin.
Uh,
And
Lo-
he comes off as very creepy, but that's
yes,
actually an act. We find out later, but he keeps appearing around Mao Mao, and he
yes,
takes a really weird liking to Mao Mao. And at first, you're like, "This is creepy," and then you find out later though it's not as creepy. Um,
yes.
but eventually, it comes to this point where Mao Mao discovers there's a murder plot, and
Yeah. Well,
she
there's a
realizes.
couple other events that lead, like, because I don't want to miss around some of the other stuff. Like, there is Mao Mao ends up helping Jinshi become ugly so he can go into
Oh right,
town and
yeah.
not get approached. But it also leads to Mao Mao, like they end up separating, and but before they leave, because Jinchi was talking to Rankin, and Rankin's basically brought up there's one way to end a working like a courtesan's contract. And Jinchi and he says you should ask Mao Mao. Mao Mao will know the answer. So Jinchi ends up asking Mao Mao,
Right.
and for Mao Mao, this is a very painful subject. So when he asks her that, it's kind of like a stab in the heart. Um,
Yeah. Well, because it's
but
basically Mamau tells him like the only way for
there's
them to
there's
get.
two ways.
Yeah,
Losing your purity and then pregnancy.
yeah. Well, because they basically become worthless when they're pregnant.
Yeah. And Jinchi is kind of left shocked. And then
And because earlier in the series we had seen Mau taking care of this prostitute essentially that was
well,
pretty far gone.
yeah. So
And has a
that's kind of
miss.
what leads to the next thing too,
Yeah,
is that like Mama doesn't accompany Jinchi the rest of the way, which kind of understandable. And she ends up returning back home, and then she ends up returning to the brothel where she does encounter the woman who they keep her in the annex building,
because
and
she's
she's
dying of
actually syphilis.
syphilis.
Yeah, which
Um,
at the time it was not something that
could well
could.
they imply that if they had at the time if they knew what they knew now when she discovered it they could have saved her, but at the time she got it was too late.
Yeah.
But
Um.
what's interesting is the second you see her and you see her hair color you immediately go huh because it's very
Yeah, it's very
it
familiar.
looks very similar, and Mao got really upset about the pregnancy thing. I wonder why.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of implied what's going on there. Mama also has nightmares of this woman cutting her fingertip off with a knife,
Yes, which
which
does actually happen.
well, yeah, it's a whole thing, and it's kind of
Yes,
like
you'll find
oh,
out later, but we can't talk about that yet.
well,
Um,
eventually though she does go back to the palace, and
well, and this is where she starts piecing everything together. Like,
yes,
not everything is something's wrong. And then she finds out that Jinchi is performing a purification ritual. And then she finds out that all of these mysterious circumstances are leading to this purification ritual. So, what does she do? She goes, I gotta stop this. So she ends up going stop it, gets the shit beaten out
well,
of
yeah,
her
she
by
gets
the
to this
guards.
one fucking meathead guard who won't let her in no matter what, and he fucking clubs her in the face with a mat like a fucking
No, yeah.
baton,
And
and she
she
gets
keeps going.
yeah,
She
she's
gets
like fucked up, but she still won't stop. And Locken shows up, and he's basically like,
let her
"Are
go.
are you gonna really beat up a woman here?
Yeah.
What's the matter with you?" We find out later why he
Yes.
showed up particularly,
Well,
but
and this ends up really affecting him too at what happens because Mama ends up basically breaking into the ceremony, stopping it, pushes Jinchi out of the way as he is mere
well,
seconds
we
from
don't
being
realize
crushed
it's
to death.
Jinshi at first. She
Well, yeah,
pushes the person out of the way, and then immediately sees it's actually Jinshi. And Mao Mao is
yeah.
so delirious and out of it because not only is
Well,
her face fucked up, she fucked her leg up.
yeah. Well, because she got impaled by something. Also just was hurt from before. But
Probably concussed.
yeah, also concussed. Um, And though she's shocked, she's relieved, but she falls unconscious into his arms. And then
Yeah.
there's the scene, which is probably one of the most like probably powerful scenes in the show of when Jinchi carries her out unconscious into his arms. And all of the guards that like didn't want to let her through are shocked because they're
Yeah.
like something happened. And then Locken is like paralyzed. Like he doesn't know what to do because he's
Yeah.
looking at his daughter who like
Well, we don't know
is
that yet.
also
We
Well,
don't know
yeah.
that
Oh,
yet.
yeah. Sorry. Well, spoiler. He's looking at her, and like she's also bleeding out as they're walking away because as you're seeing it, music is playing, and there's just a trail of blood following them, and it is like I remember watching that scene and kind of getting chills. Like it was definitely
Yeah.
one of the ones where you're like, oh my god. Um, but thankfully, Mama's
Yeah.
okay. She wakes up the next morning. She's not feeling great, but she ends up explaining to them what happened. And
Yep.
explaining how all the things are connected. And she we didn't mention it, but at one point she ran into this girl who worked in the court and was like a medicine person. And it find out that she was mixed in with it, and she actually uses a drug to make her appear dead, and she
Yep.
escaped, which is wild. I don't know if that's real, but
There is, I think, drugs that can make you
the
appear dead.
resurrection medicine.
But
Um,
she played that poor store owner like a fiddle too.
yeah,
But eventually Mao does get better, and we eventually find out that Gyako is actually pregnant again,
yes,
and Mao needs to go back to the rear castle. Basically, Mao basically gets free reign now at this point. She can just go wherever.
yeah, yeah.
But what's kind of cool is at this there's one scene before that where like Jinshi kind of mentions maybe you should ask Lock-in about some of this stuff, and the death glare Mao gives Jinshi is like one of the most
Yeah.
iconic scenes in this show
Uh-huh. But
because
then, oh,
it literally it's a blink or you miss it moment
yes,
where when he says that it just goes silent for a few minutes and you're like what's going on, and then it just cuts to this like close up of Mao's face where she looks pissed, and then it like flashes her eyes real quick and then it goes away, and Jinshi's like I've never seen her look at me like that before.
yeah. Well, and then like the next thing that happens is that like she ends up going to Lock-in at one point. But then he kind of gives her a challenge.
Well,
Um,
I will say before this happened, the whole time I was like because I was piecing it together because you don't know at this point. I'm like, why is he so attached to her? Like blah blah blah. And I'm like, is he her dad? And then
yeah.
immediately Mama's like, hello, father. I'm like,
You're like,
okay,
all right,
that answers that.
daddy's home.
Um, but yeah, she
But
ends up getting this challenge. It's like chess mixed with Go mixed with
well,
everything. And
no, no, no. It's the blue roses first.
oh, right,
That
that yeah,
happens after. So he ends up challenging her to basically at one point in the castle it was decorated with blue roses. And before it's like this another part garden party is coming up, but it's like in the winter and stuff, so it's colder, is coming up, and she needs to have blue roses from then. So basically, one, roses aren't in season right now, and two, blue is not something that is easily made. So you see the process of like Mao and her friend that she I can't remember her name, but she sorry,
the
she
other
worked with her
random girl,
initially.
yeah,
Well, she worked with her initially before she got moved to be part of the moved to the back of the palace with the
yep,
concerts. Um, so they end up actually going and they make the roses, and they actually end up making the multicolored roses. They don't bloom all the way just because of the season, but at the
yeah.
garden party, they do have the things decorated, all
I do.
decorated with
I
blue
also love the
roses.
fact that like when she's explaining how she did it, she goes, "Oh yeah, the emperor knows. I showed him the trick, and he thought it was great."
Yeah, which is
um,
really fun. The emperor really likes Mao, which is, but not in a weird way.
yeah, not in a
Um,
weird way. He likes Mao because Mao's competent.
yeah, I think he also must know a little bit that Jinshi got some feels. Um, but they end up doing. She ends up completing her task, and she also ends up helping all the ladies in waiting that are her friends by giving them like tools to survive the cold.
Yeah,
Which is also nice. And she
and
also starts the new trend of ladies having manicures.
yeah, which everyone's like, what? Everyone's like, "What is that? What's on your hand?"
But after the challenge, after she succeeds the challenge, she ends up going to see Locken again, and he challenges her to a game of Chinese chess, like you were saying.
Yeah,
Um, and then there was the option of like the loser has to drink a spiked liquor or something. And at
and we
one point,
we
Jinji thinks that Locken is losing on purpose, or but then it turns out that like He didn't get sick from the poison. He just can't handle his liquor.
Yeah, he gets fucked by the liquor, and then basically Mao Mao sends him off to the brothel, and then we get one of the biggest plot dumps in this entire series,
Yeah.
where we
Well,
find out that
you
he
find
was.
out his backstory and his connect, like why he's not a part of Mamo's life. And honestly,
It's sad. It's
you feel for the guy.
Well,
Like
yeah, because I remember I texted you. I was like, "Is the creepy guy Mao Mao's dad?" And then a few minutes later, I was like, "I feel bad for the guy now."
no, yeah, like it's a very heartbreaking story of like he was going to well, because he and Mamo's mother were actually truly in love. Like
Isn't it
Mamo's,
like Fox Lana or something? Or
it's a like faux. I think it's something. It's like pronounced like a faux something. But I'm just gonna call her Mama's mom. Like Mama's mom was a special consort because
she
she
was like
wasn't really.
the nicest one at the time.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was more of like where the other ones were more flirtatious and like
She
played
was more
music and
smart.
sang. Yes, she was more knowledgeable and she actually played Chinese chess, which I think is Go.
Go,
Um
yeah.
they played like she was a champion Go player. And so many people would come just to challenge her just in a game of Go.
Well, I
And
think it's implied that she was one of the cheaper ones at first, and then after like it was discovered this, like she became kind of
yeah,
expensive.
she became one of the most like elusive ones. And Locken fell for her. Like
Yeah.
because like he was actually a really good Go player too and he lost.
Well, also
And
the
he
thing with
ends up
Locken too is it's implied that he has really bad eyesight, and they do that cool anime thing
well,
where like
I don't even think it's like really bad eyesight. It's more
well,
of just like
the way they implied it was it's a metaphorical thing, but he also has bad eyesight. Like he doesn't see things the same way as other things.
well, I think it's also like just a mental thing. Like I think it truly came down to he's never connected with a human being before, and the first person he ever did was Mao Mao's mom, and then
Yeah.
Mao Mao.
Well, because
So he
it's
never really
shown that
saw people as people.
everyone just has like blank faces.
Yeah,
Um, but like when he sees Mao Mao's mom, he goes, "A face. Like, what is this?"
yeah. No, yeah, it's like the first time and he falls for her. But what
But
ends up happening is that his father actually ends up making him work
well,
overseas and
what
he couldn't get
happens
into
first though is he spends one last night with her, and it's implied
yeah,
that she had manipulated things to get pregnant because she knew her
yeah.
value would plummet if she did.
Well, and I think it was like implying that someone was about to buy her contract and he couldn't afford it.
Yeah,
So she had done that to kind of manipulate, but then he gets sent away. He's trying to contact her, but he can't. And she was trying to contact him. She has the baby. She loses her value, which leads to the whole part of the reason why Mao Mao had that very terrifying dream of her
yeah,
finger getting cut
because
off is she was sending it almost as a curse. It was like a
yeah,
curse to him.
well, because he
Um,
eventually comes back and finds out that she's gone because she had to sell herself on the market, and that's how she got the syphilis.
yeah,
But it's shown that she had sent all these letters, and then the final thing was the finger, and it's a tragic thing where she's gone. He thinks she's gone, and then Mao Mao he doesn't know what happened to Mao Mao
yeah,
at the time, and it's implied also why he's not part of her life and why Mao Mao has no interest in him.
yeah.
But
Um,
eventually, though, he once he wakes up, he's in the brothel, and he basically the old lady who runs it's like, Mao Mao says you're going to buy one of my girls.
yeah.
And he lines them all up, and he's like kind of debating which one. He ends up going wanting at one point he's going to go for the nice one that was like
Mei Mei.
Mei Mei, yeah,
Mei Mei, who basically raised Mao Mao.
yeah. And it's implied that that's the way I read it was Mao Mao's like it ended up working out the way Mao Mao intended, but at the same time she really wanted him to buy Mei Mei just to get her out of there.
Yeah. But Mei Mei is also one of the things we missed to talk about is one of the hairpins Mao Mao gets is from a soldier, and he ends up coming back, and he actually ends up falling in love with Mei Mei. So I believe it's implied that he's
I
trying
thought
to
he liked
save
the
up
one with
to.
giant. I thought he liked the one with the giant boobs.
I thought that one was Mei Mei. Oh, maybe it's not. No, yeah, you're right. It was a different
Yeah,
one. Never mind. But Mei Mei and Mao Mao have a very close
close
relationship because,
relationship.
well, I think it also implied that Mei Mei, when Mao Mao was born, her mom couldn't feed her, and I think
Oh,
it was implied that Mei Mei actually fed her.
I thought that was also the one with the giant
Oh,
boobs.
was it? Damn it! I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
don't
then.
think
Mao
I think
Mao
Maymay's
has a
just
real
friends with her. I think that's really all
well. I
Maymay
think she
is.
has a relationship with. I think all of them are like mothers to her. All the main
Yeah.
big three are all like mothers to her. But this ends up leading to like the really powerful scene of Locken basically forces his way to
Well,
Mao Mao's mom
Maymay kind of opens the door and she's like,
and says
"Hey."
go, and then he ends up just basically forcing like because the owner of the brothel is trying to make him stop,
Yeah.
but then it ends up being a very good thing where he ends up buying her. And then you're cut to the scene where Mei Mei ends up sending Mao Mao a dress.
Yeah.
Because part of what the courtesans do is that when someone is bought out, they perform a dance.
Yeah.
And Mao Mao has to perform this dance because this dance is for her mother. So she actually ends up performing the dance on the roof of the castle.
And then
Um,
she sneaks up on her and she almost falls off the roof.
yes, she almost
And then
does.
she's like, "What are you doing?"
Yes. And they end up like and it kind of just ends
It ends similar to Frieren where it's like it's ending,
there will
but
be
there's a
more.
season 2, which there currently is, and I'm currently watching it.
Yes. Well,
But
and I think it ends with Jinshi coming and saying the Jade Pavilion has another case for Mao Mao, and then
yeah,
that's going to lead into season 2.
yes. So, final thoughts. I liked both these series a lot. Um,
Yay! So, can we confirm that all of my recommendations have been great so far?
yeah, I mean they have,
I
but
win. We're at the point where both of my this podcast is just both of my recommendations, which is
this
hilarious.
was literally a case where I watched two similarly like that shows, and I was like, let's just do these.
No,
But yeah,
but
I really liked Frieren. Frieren was
well, I like both of them for different reasons, but also kind of similar reasons.
well, they
Like,
both have very deep, like complex stories, but they
yes,
do it in very different ways. Like
like
Apothecary Diaries is a lot more comedic,
yes.
and kind of very sexual. It's a very sexual
Well,
show.
but it's also like I love like I feel like there hasn't been like a good mystery show in a while. And it was really refreshing to just have a really good mystery
Mm.
because I was always like so like I was like hooked on all of the stories. Like whenever Mama was figuring something out, I was in. Like I loved it. Like
Oh yeah,
but then Freerin had so like I cried
Frieren is
a
just a
lot watching
unique.
Freerin. I
Frieren is a
cried.
very unique take on the whole coming of age kind of like storyline where it's literally it's that story, but it's like what happens after. It's literally the new game
Well,
plus of anime,
well,
where it's
and
literally a what happens after the victory, and like this is like what goes on.
but also like just Freeren's character is just so well written,
Yeah.
and your heart breaks for her at times.
Hmm.
Like you are feeling her emotions, and you're feeling some like it's like you're with a person who's struggling to like really truthfully connect to her emotions. Like it's just like oh, it was like a gut punch. Like I cried so much watching that show, and I had moments in the Apothecary Diaries, but both of these were just like such great
Like
stories that
you
left
would,
you wanting more.
yeah, you would always like, where's this going? And it all in both twists and turns, like you
Yeah.
did not expect them to go the directions they did.
No. Yeah.
And they have very likable characters, great dubs. Like the dubs are very well done, and honestly, I'm excited for more. I mean, I'm already watching season 2 of Apothecary Diaries as it comes out. So
I'm glad I got you hooked.
yeah, no, they were good. I enjoyed both, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Both
um,
really great. Also, just like very different stories for the majority of stuff that's been coming. Like for me, I
yeah,
know I have been more attracted to like the fighting, the shonen shows, and I haven't really connected with a lot of like the shojos in a while.
slower
And these
shows with more
and
story and
these were
character.
definitely ones that like I am so glad came out because I'm like I do really like those genres too. There just hasn't been a story that has really grasped me as much
Hmm,
as these two. And there's other ones too because I put like My Happy Marriage up there as well in terms of like great story and also romance. But
hmm.
like there's like it's just great to have some really different stories. Like there's nothing like those two shows out there.
No,
There
not at the
really
moment.
isn't. They are so unique, and like
Where
I feel like anything that would try to copy it just will not do well because they're just so special.
as the kids would say, we're eating good right now.
Yeah, yes, as the kids say. Where is my child?
But I
Have you
think we've
seen
got
my child?
no. He wandered off probably. But anyways, I think we've gone on. This is our longest episode in quite some time.
Damn,
I To be
damn.
honest, I really have to pee, so I'm going to end this now. Once again, guys, thank you for joining us on the
I'm
Gaming and
dying.
Collecting Podcast. Gaming and Collecting Podcast can be found on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify.
I listen on Spotify.
Nice.
What do you listen on?
I listen on superpodnetwork.com,
No,
which is
no
an awesome,
cheater banner. No
an
cheater
awesome,
banner.
an awesome site with a whole bunch of
An
great
awesome,
shows,
an awesome,
videos,
an
and
awesome, an
blogs.
awesome,
Normally, I
an
would go through
awesome.
all of them, but this has gone on very long, and I actually really have to pee. So, once
Bill's
again,
gonna
guys,
tinkle.
I,
Running water, running water.
anyways, guys, once again, thank you for joining us on the Gaming and Collecting Podcast, and we will see you all later.
Unmute me, bitch. How fucking dare you?